Welcome to one of the most fascinating journeys you'll ever take. This isn't just an intellectual exercise, it's a gentle exploration through the Buddhist understanding of what happens when we die and where consciousness travels next. Don't worry, you're perfectly safe and very much alive as we embark on this adventure together. Think of this as the ultimate guided meditation, a profound inquiry where we'll discover ancient wisdom about death that's actually designed to make life more peaceful and meaningful. For over 2,000 years, Buddhist masters have meticulously mapped the territories of consciousness with the precision of cosmic cartographers, describing 31 distinct realms where awareness can dwell after the body stops working. These aren't scary ghost stories or religious mythology. They're practical teachings about how the mind works and where our intentions and actions naturally lead us. It's like having a GPS for the soul, except instead of turn left at the next intersection, it's more like be kind to people and you might end up somewhere quite pleasant. So let's imagine together, in the spirit of peaceful exploration, that you've just completed this lifetime and your consciousness is beginning the most extraordinary transition possible. Your body has served its purpose beautifully, like a faithful car that's finally earned its retirement after years of reliable service. But here's where the Buddhist understanding gets really interesting. You're still here, still aware, still. You just without the physical vehicle you've been driving around for decades. The dissolution begins with a gentleness that surprises you. Your vision doesn't simply fade to black like falling asleep or losing consciousness from anesthesia. Instead, it starts to separate from your physical eyes in the most peculiar way imaginable. You can still see the room where your body lies motionless, but now you're somehow viewing it from a perspective that makes no logical sense. Impossibly, you're observing your own still form from above, as if consciousness itself has been gently lifted away from its physical container, like steam rising from a warm cup of tea on a cold morning. This aerial perspective reveals details you never noticed during life. The way late afternoon light falls across your peaceful face, creating shadows that seem to tell the story of every joy and sorrow you've ever experienced. The small imperfections in the ceiling that you walked beneath for years without ever seeing. Tiny cracks that now appear like rivers on a map of some unknown territory. Dust motes dancing in a golden sunbeam, streaming through the window, each particle moving in its own perfect choreography of existence, revealing the constant motion that underlies all apparent stillness. Everything appears hyper-real, now more vivid and alive than it ever seemed when filtered through the limitations of physical senses. Colors have depths you never perceived before. The blue of the wallpaper contains infinite shades of sky ocean and possibility. Textures reveal their true complexity. The smooth surface of the bedside table shows microscopic landscapes of wood grain that tell stories of seasoned storms and slow growth towards sunlight. Your hearing undergoes an equally fascinating transformation. The sounds of the physical world don't disappear entirely. They become strangely distant and muffled, like listening to conversations through thick water or heavy glass. But underneath these fading earthly sounds, you begin to perceive something else entirely, something that stops your non-physical breath with its beauty and profundity. It's not quite music, and it's not quite silence, but rather a deep, resonant humming that seems to emerge from the very fabric of reality itself. This cosmic sound has always been there, you realize with growing amazement, but your physical ears were never refined enough to detect it. It's the sound of existence itself, the fundamental vibration that underlies all manifest phenomena, the primordial that mystics have pointed toward for millennia, but could never adequately describe in words. As you listen more carefully to the symphony of being you, begin to distinguish different tones and harmonies within it, each carrying its own message about the nature of reality. Some frequencies carry the pure essence of joy, lifting your awareness like bubbles rising through champagne, filling you with lightness you've never experienced in physical form. Others resonate with profound peace settling into your consciousness, like gentle snow falling on a quiet winter evening, bringing a stillness deeper than any meditation you've ever achieved. Still others vibrate with pure understanding, each note clarifying mysteries you never knew you carried, answering questions you never knew how to ask. You're beginning to understand that reality has its own language, its own way of communicating truths too subtle and profound for human words to capture. This is direct transmission consciousness, speaking to consciousness, without the intermediary of concepts, beliefs, or interpretations. The sensation of having a physical body starts to dissolve in waves of decreasing intensity, like ice melting in warm water. First, you lose the feeling of weight. That constant pull of gravity that shaped every movement of your earthly existence simply vanishes, as if it never existed. The freedom is intoxicating, like discovering you can fly after a lifetime of believing you were forever bound to the ground by invisible chains. You want to laugh at how heavy everything felt during life, how much energy you spent fighting against forces that now seem completely arbitrary and temporary. Then the boundaries of your skin begin to feel increasingly meaningless, as if they were just arbitrary lines drawn on an infinite canvas by an artist who was experimenting with the illusion of separation. Where does you end and the space around you begin? The question becomes impossible to answer as consciousness expands beyond its familiar physical borders, spreading out like a drop of ink released into clear water, creating beautiful patterns as it merges with the infinite medium of awareness itself. Touch transforms into something entirely different and far more intimate than anything you experienced in physical form. Instead of feeling separate objects with distinct surfaces and textures, you begin to sense the energetic essence of everything around you. The walls of the room feel like gentle vibrations, each molecule humming with its own unique frequency, creating a complex symphony of matter and energy that speaks of the fundamental aliveness underlying all apparently solid things. The furniture appears as patterns of condensed awareness, temporary formations, in the endless dance of consciousness, taking shape and dissolving again like clouds forming and reforming in an infinite sky. Even the air itself reveals its true nature as dancing currents of pure possibility, alive and responsive to the slightest shift in your attention, carrying information and energy in ways that make the crude transmission of physical sound waves seem primitive by comparison. You can feel the electromagnetic field of every object, the subtle life force flowing through every plant in the room, the emotional residue left by every person who has ever entered this space. The room becomes a library of experiences, each surface holding memories like pages in an infinite book of consciousness, exploring itself through countless forms and interactions. Your sense of smell evolves into something far more subtle and profound than anything possible through biological organs. Rather than detecting the familiar sense of flowers, food, or perfume, you begin to perceive what can only be described as the emotional fragrances of different states of consciousness. Fear carries a sharp metallic quality that makes your awareness recoil slightly, like the smell of ozone before a dangerous storm. Love emanates the essence of blooming roses mixed with warm sunlight and fresh spring rain, creating an olfactory experience of such beauty that you wonder how you ever mistook physical attraction for the real thing. Wisdom has a clean, crystalline clarity that seems to purify whatever it touches, like mountain air at dawn that cleanses your entire being with each breath. Anger smells acrid and burning like smoke from a toxic fire that contaminates everything nearby. Compassion carries the sweetness of honey mixed with the freshness of morning dew, creating a fragrance so appealing that you understand why beings naturally gravitate toward those who embody loving kindness. These aren't metaphors or poetic descriptions. They're direct, immediate experiences, as real and vivid as any physical sensation you've ever had, perhaps more real, because they reveal the actual essence of things rather than just their surface appearances. You're discovering that consciousness has its own complete sensory system, far more sophisticated and nuanced than anything possible through the crude instruments of biological perception. Taste becomes the direct experience of different types of consciousness themselves. Hatred tastes bitter and corrosive, leaving an unpleasant residue that lingers long after the initial contact, contaminating everything it touches with its toxicity. Joy has the effervescence of the finest champagne, mixed with the sweetness of perfectly ripe strawberries, creating a flavor so delightful that you understand why happiness is called the nectar of the gods. Peace carries the refreshing quality of cool, pure spring water on the hottest day of summer, satisfying a thirst you never knew you had until this moment. Each mental state has its own distinctive flavor profile, allowing you to sample the full spectrum of possible conscious experiences, like a cosmic connoisseur exploring an infinite menu of awareness itself. You begin to understand why the ancient masters spoke of spiritual practice as cultivation. You're literally growing different flavors of consciousness through your choices and intentions. As these familiar senses continue their gentle dissolution and transformation into something far more refined, you become aware of something remarkable happening to the constant stream of thoughts that filled your mind during physical life. The endless internal chatter, the perpetual planning, worrying, remembering, analyzing, commenting, and judging that provided the soundtrack to your earthly existence begins to quiet into something much more spacious and clear. It's not that thinking stops entirely, but rather that thoughts become more like occasional clouds drifting across a vast open sky. You can observe them without being caught up in their drama, watch them arise and pass away without feeling compelled to engage with every mental formation that appears in the space of awareness. For the first time, you experience the profound silence that exists between thoughts, the pristine awareness that serves as the background for all mental activity. This mental spaciousness reveals something you never noticed during life. The awareness that observes all thoughts is itself completely unaffected by their content. Worry doesn't actually touch the consciousness that perceives worry. Fear doesn't contaminate the awareness that recognizes fear. Joy doesn't improve the essential nature of the consciousness that experiences joy. You're beginning to distinguish between the constantly changing content of awareness and the unchanging space within which all experiences arise and dissolve like waves on an ocean. Memory starts to behave in ways that would be impossible according to everything science knows about how the brain works. Instead of recalling events in the linear sequence from your most recent lifetime memories, begin arising from what feels unmistakably like multiple existences stretching back through eons of time. A moment of kindness you showed to a stranger just last week appears alongside the vivid memory of being a medieval monk copying sacred texts by flickering candlelight in a stone monastery. The joy you felt at your child's first steps blends seamlessly with the profound satisfaction of harvesting golden rice as a peasant farmer in ancient China, your hands dark with earth and your heart full of gratitude for another successful season. The grief of losing your mother mingles with the heartbreak of watching your village burn as a young woman fleeing barbarian raids in some long forgotten century, carrying only a baby and the clothes on your back. These aren't fantasies or imagination. They carry the unmistakable quality of genuine memory, complete with sensory details, emotional textures, and the deep recognition that comes only from direct experience. You remember the smell of parchment and ink, the weight of the illuminated manuscripts, the ache in your back from hours of careful lettering. You recall the feeling of rice stalks between your fingers, the songs the other workers sang to make the labor lighter, the taste of simple food that somehow satisfied more deeply than any gourmet meal you've ever eaten. Past and present lose their rigid boundaries as consciousness reveals its true, timeless nature. Linear time begins to feel like an arbitrary construct useful for organizing physical experience, but ultimately illusory when viewed from the perspective of awareness itself. You've always existed, you realize with growing wonder and a kind of cosmic homesickness for a truth you're just now remembering. Death and birth are simply transitions between different costumes, different roles in the endless drama of consciousness, exploring its own infinite possibilities. But perhaps most surprising of all is what happens to your sense of identity. That carefully constructed collection of memories, preferences, fears, desires, and personal characteristics that you spent a lifetime calling yourself. This personality begins to feel more like a costume you've been wearing rather than who you actually are underneath the layers of conditioning and social programming. The name your parents gave you, the career you pursued, the relationships you formed, the beliefs you held so passionately, all of these start to feel like temporary roles you played rather than fundamental aspects of your being. Underneath all those personal characteristics, something much more fundamental and unchanging begins to reveal itself with crystalline clarity. It's pure awareness itself, not awareness of something specific, but awareness as the very ground and source of all possible experience. This consciousness has no age, no gender, no nationality, no personal history, no preferences or aversions. It doesn't struggle to maintain comfortable states or avoid difficult ones. It doesn't judge any phenomenon as good or bad. It doesn't prefer one experience over another. It simply recognizes witnesses and allows whatever arises to be exactly as it is with perfect equanimity and unconditional love. This is what you truly are. You realize with a shock of recognition that reverberates through every fiber of your being, like a cosmic tuning fork struck by truth itself. Everything else, all the drama, all the suffering, all the seeking and struggling, has been consciousness temporarily forgetting its own nature while playing various roles in the cosmic theater of existence. As this profound recognition settles into your being, like honey dissolving in warm milk, you begin to understand why the Buddhist masters who first mapped this territory spoke of death not as an ending, but as the most liberating transition consciousness can undergo. You're not disappearing or being extinguished or moving to some distant location in space. You're discovering what you've always been beneath the temporary costumes of personality preference and physical form. Yet, even as this peace and recognition fill your being completely, you begin to sense subtle movement starting in the depths of consciousness. Not movement through physical space, but movement through dimensions of awareness itself, through territories of existence that operate according to laws far more refined than the physics of matter and energy. You begin to perceive what the ancient Buddhist wisdom calls karma, though not in the crude way it's often misunderstood. This isn't some cosmic system of punishment and reward, but something much more like gravity, an impersonal natural law governing how consciousness moves through different states based on the momentum created by intentions and actions across countless lifetimes. You can feel these karmic currents beginning to influence your journey now. Every act of genuine kindness creates streams of upward flowing energy. Every moment of hatred generates downward pulling forces. It's as automatic as water flowing downhill, yet as intimate as your own heartbeat. As you prepare for what comes next, the vast landscape of existence opens before you, like a three-dimensional map of consciousness itself. 31 distinct realms where awareness can dwell, each offering different lessons, different possibilities, different expressions of what it means to be conscious in an infinite universe. The journey begins now with the first profound understanding of the four lower realms. The karmic currents pull you downward first, not because you're falling in any physical sense, but because certain energies within your consciousness resonate with lower frequencies of existence. You're about to experience the four realms where suffering predominates, where consciousness learns through difficulty, where the natural consequences of negative intentions play themselves out across vast spans of time. These aren't punishments imposed by angry gods or cosmic judges keeping score of your mistakes. They're simply the natural destinations where certain types of mental states gravitate like iron filings drawn to magnets or water flowing toward the lowest point in the landscape. Understanding this makes what you're about to witness both more bearable and more meaningful. Every experience here serves the ultimate purpose of teaching consciousness about the consequences of its choices. Hell Realms Naraya. The descent into the Hell Realms begins with a sensation unlike anything imaginable. Your consciousness doesn't fall through space, but rather sinks through layers of increasingly dense and painful awareness, like diving deeper and deeper into an ocean of suffering where each level brings greater pressure and darkness. The temperature of existence itself seems to shift not physical heat or cold, but something far more fundamental, as if the very fabric of reality becomes hostile to comfortable experience. You arrive in what Buddhist wisdom calls avicii, the deepest and most intense of the hell realms. The landscape defies description because it's not really a place in any conventional sense. It's a state of consciousness where suffering has become so concentrated that it creates its own environment, its own laws of existence, its own twisted physics of pain. The ground beneath you burns, but not with ordinary fire. This is the fire of hatred itself, made manifest the accumulated rage and cruelty from countless beings across countless lifetimes, expressing itself as a living flame that seeks out every nerve ending of consciousness and ignites it with unbearable intensity. You understand immediately that this fire cannot be extinguished by water or smothered by earth. It can only burn itself out when the hatred that feeds it is finally exhausted. The air itself seems to scream with the voices of beings experiencing the natural consequences of their own cruelty. But as you listen more carefully with your expanded awareness, you begin to distinguish individual stories within this symphony of suffering. Here is a dictator who ordered the deaths of millions, now experiencing every moment of terror he inflicted multiplied by the number of his victims. There is a serial killer reliving each murder from the perspective of those he destroyed, understanding for the first time the full weight of what he stole from the world. Yet, even in this most terrible of realms, something profound becomes clear. The suffering, as intense as it is, carries within it the seeds of its own healing. Each moment of pain burns away another layer of the hatred and cruelty that created this experience in the first place. Like a fever that rises to kill an infection, this suffering serves the ultimate purpose of purifying consciousness from the toxins of deliberate evil. Time operates according to its own cruel mathematics here. What feels like a single day in this realm equals thousands of human years, stretching each moment of agony across eons of subjective experience. Yet paradoxically, the very intensity of the suffering also accelerates the karmic exhaustion. Hatred burns itself out faster when it encounters no resistance, like a fire consuming all available fuel in a contained space. You witness the 8 major hell realms, each specialized for types of negative karma. In the realm of crushing beings who physically harmed others, experience their bodies being pulverized by massive weights, only to regenerate and endure the process again and again until the karma of violence is completely burned away. In the realm of cutting, those who caused pain through sharp words or weapons find themselves dismembered by mountains of blades, learning viscerally about the cutting nature of cruel speech and harmful actions. The realm of heat burns with fires that never consume but eternally purify, teaching those who spread anger about the true nature of the flames they fanned during life. The realm of cold freezes consciousness in ice that preserves rather than numbs, allowing complete experience of the isolation and heartlessness these beings created for others through their indifference to suffering. But perhaps most remarkable is what you observe happening to consciousness itself during these experiences. Initially, beings in these realms react exactly as they did in life, with anger, blame, resentment, and attempts to escape responsibility for their circumstances. They curse their fate, rage against the injustice of their suffering, and look for others to blame for their predicament. However, as the eons pass and the karmic debt slowly burns itself out, something begins to shift. The constant resistance to their circumstances gradually exhausts itself like a person who finally stops struggling against quicksand. In that moment of surrender, a different kind of awareness begins to dawn. They start to see the perfect justice in their experience, the precise correspondence between their actions and their current circumstances. This recognition doesn't come as punishment or judgment, but as education. For the first time, they truly understand the impact of their choices on other conscious beings. They feel in their own experience exactly what they inflicted on others, not as revenge, but as the only way consciousness can truly learn the weight of its actions. This understanding begins to plant seeds of genuine remorse, compassion, and wisdom that will eventually sprout into better choices in future lifetimes. The most profound moment comes when beings in hell realms finally stop adding new layers of hatred to their experience, when they cease blaming others for their circumstances, stop generating fresh anger about their situation, and begin to accept responsibility for the choices that brought them here. In that instant of genuine acceptance, the external hell begins to dissolve because it no longer serves any purifying purpose. You watch with amazement as beings who have endured millions of years of the most intense suffering suddenly find themselves surrounded by cooling breezes, gentle light, and the first taste of peace they've experienced since their descent into these realms. The hell realm hasn't changed, they have. Their consciousness has been purified of the toxic elements that created their hellish experience in the first place. This transformation reveals the ultimate compassion built into the very structure of existence. No being is ever condemned to eternal suffering, because suffering serves a purpose, the purification of consciousness from elements that create misery for themselves and others. Once that purification is complete, once the lessons have been learned and the karmic debts have been paid, consciousness naturally gravitates toward more peaceful and harmonious states. Animal realm, Tirukana, Yoni. From the intense heat of the hell realms, your consciousness rises into what feels like a completely different universe governed by entirely different laws. The animal realm pulses with raw, instinctual energy life, force flowing through countless forms, but constrained by the narrow channels of survival, reproduction, and basic pleasure seeking. This is existence stripped down to its most fundamental drives, consciousness operating through biological programming rather than reflective choice. You experience incarnation as a deer in a vast forest, your awareness suddenly compressed into a nervous system designed for hypervigilance. Every sound, every scent, every shift in the light carries potential signals of danger or opportunity. Your consciousness operates primarily through instinct and emotion rather than reasoning or planning. There's no abstract thinking about tomorrow or yesterday, just an endless present moment of immediate response to environmental stimuli. The simplicity is both liberating and limiting. There's no existential anxiety about the meaning of life, no worry about social status or future security, no guilt about past mistakes or fear about death in the abstract. But there's also no opportunity for moral choice, no possibility of spiritual development, no capacity for the kind of deep reflection that leads to wisdom and compassion. You exist in a kind of eternal present that's both peaceful and profoundly constrained. Your dear consciousness experiences moments of genuine joy, the sweet taste of fresh grass after a rain, the warmth of sunlight on your coat during a lazy afternoon, the simple pleasure of resting with your herd in a meadow filled with wildflowers. These satisfactions are immediate and uncomplicated, free from the complex psychological layers that often prevent humans from enjoying simple pleasures. But the fear is equally immediate and overwhelming. The scent of a predator sends electric terror through every cell of your being, triggering an explosion of adrenaline and the desperate urge to flee. Unlike human anxiety, which often involves imagined future threats, this fear is sharp focused and completely appropriate to immediate circumstances. Yet it dominates your experience so completely that peaceful moments become rare interludes between episodes of vigilant watchfulness. Your consciousness shifts, experiencing life as a house cat in a comfortable home. The security is profound: no predators, no food scarcity, no exposure to harsh weather. You spend hours in perfect contentment, sleeping in sunbeams, purring with satisfaction after meals, playing with simple objects that trigger your hunting instincts in safe, harmless ways. There's a kind of meditation in the cat's ability to be completely present with whatever is happening right now. Yet, even in this comfortable existence, you sense the profound limitation of animal consciousness. There's no understanding of your human companions' complex emotional lives, no appreciation for art or music or literature, no capacity for philosophical reflection or spiritual aspiration. Your world, while pleasant, remains very small, bounded by immediate sensory experience and basic biological drives. The perspective shifts again, and you find yourself as a dolphin in the open ocean. Here, animal consciousness reaches its most sophisticated expression: complex social relationships, playful creativity, apparent emotional bonds, and forms of communication that approach primitive language. You experience the joy of swimming with your pod through coral reefs, the satisfaction of successful group hunting, the tenderness of nurturing young offspring. Yet even this highly developed animal awareness operates within strict limits. There's no abstract reasoning about the nature of existence, no moral consideration of the impact of your actions on other species, no spiritual questioning about the purpose of life or the possibility of existence beyond physical death. Your intelligence serves primarily survival and social cohesion, rather than the kind of transcendent understanding that characterizes human potential at its best. You begin to understand why consciousness is reborn in animal form. It's not a punishment for past mistakes, but rather a natural consequence of living primarily through instinct and emotion rather than wisdom and compassion. Beings who make choices based mainly on immediate gratification, who respond to challenges with automatic reactions rather than thoughtful consideration, who live without developing moral sensitivity or spiritual awareness, naturally gravitate toward forms of existence that match their level of consciousness development. The animal realm serves as both a resting place and a learning environment for consciousness that has been damaged by intense negative experiences. Animal incarnation provides an opportunity to heal through simplicity. The basic rhythms of eating, sleeping, reproducing, and responding to immediate environmental needs gradually restore equilibrium to awareness that may have been traumatized by more complex forms of suffering. At the same time, animal existence teaches important lessons about the present moment, about the satisfaction available in simple pleasures, about the wisdom built into instinctual responses to natural environments. Many humans could benefit from the animal's capacity to enjoy food without guilt, to rest without anxiety, to respond to affection without complex psychological defenses. Yet the limitation becomes clear when you observe the rare moments when animal consciousness approaches the threshold of more developed awareness. You witness an elephant grieving the death of a family member, displaying emotional complexity that seems to reach towards something beyond instinct. You see a great ape using tools and displaying problem solving abilities that hint at the capacity for abstract thought. These moments reveal consciousness pressing against the boundaries of its current form, ready to evolve toward more sophisticated expressions. The most profound insight comes when you recognize that every animal you encounter has the same essential Buddha nature, the same fundamental awareness that characterizes all conscious beings. The cat's purring, the deer's alertness, the dolphin's playfulness all are expressions of consciousness, exploring its own nature through different biological and environmental constraints. The forms are temporary, but the awareness animating them is eternal and ultimately identical to your own deepest nature. As your time in the animal realm draws to a close, you carry with you a deep appreciation for the wisdom of simplicity, the importance of present moment awareness, and the recognition that consciousness expresses itself beautifully at every level of development. You also understand more clearly why human birth is considered so precious. It provides the perfect balance of intelligence and challenge that makes moral development and spiritual awakening possible. Hungry Ghost Realm, PETA. Your consciousness transitions into something far more disturbing than the simple limitations of animal existence. You enter the realm of the PETA, the hungry ghosts, where consciousness experiences the consequences of greed attachment and insatiable craving in their most concentrated and tormented form. This isn't physical hunger or thirst, but something far more profound and desperate, the spiritual starvation that comes from building your entire sense of identity around wanting things you can never truly possess. Your form in this realm perfectly reflects the inner state that created this rebirth. Your throat becomes impossibly narrow, like a needle's eye, making it nearly impossible to swallow anything substantial. Your stomach expands to enormous proportions, becoming a cavern of emptiness that can never be filled no matter how much you manage to consume. Your limbs become thin and weak, lacking the strength to obtain the things you desperately crave. This grotesque form isn't arbitrary. It's the perfect external expression of the internal reality of someone whose life was dominated by insatiable wanting. The hunger you experience defies all logic and description. It's not the simple physical hunger that comes from missing a few meals, which can be satisfied by eating and then forgotten. This is existential hunger, the deep spiritual emptiness that comes from trying to fill the infinite space of your true nature with finite objects and experiences. No amount of consumption can touch this hunger because it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding about what you are and what could possibly satisfy you. You wander invisibly through worlds of abundance, able to see but unable to access the plenty that surrounds you everywhere. You watch living beings enjoy meals, but when you try to partake, the food turns to ash in your mouth or disappears before reaching your throat. You observe people drinking clear, refreshing water, but when you attempt to join them, the liquid becomes molten metal that burns your tongue or sand that provides no moisture whatsoever. The cruelest aspect of this existence is that you can perceive abundance everywhere, but cannot participate in it. Gardens full of ripe fruits dangle just beyond your reach. Streams of clean water flow constantly past you, but turn bitter or poisonous the moment you try to drink. Comfortable homes filled with warmth and light remain forever locked to you, leaving you to wander in cold darkness, despite being surrounded by shelter and comfort. Gradually, you begin to understand the psychological patterns that created this nightmarish existence. Every moment of greed you experienced during life, every time you looked at what others had and felt envious rather than happy for them, every instance when you accumulated possessions, not because you needed them, but because having them made you feel more secure or important. All of these moments planted seeds that have now blossomed into this realm of perpetual want. The hungry ghost realm reveals the ultimate futility of trying to solve inner emptiness through external acquisition. During life, you may have believed that just one more purchase, one more achievement, one more relationship, one more experience would finally provide the satisfaction you sought. Here you discover what addiction counselors and spiritual teachers have always known, that craving feeds on itself, growing stronger with each attempt to satisfy it rather than weaker. You encounter other hungry ghosts, each trapped in their own particular version of insatiable wanting. Some crave food they can never taste. Others long for sexual pleasure they can never experience. Still others desperately seek the approval and recognition that remained elusive during their human lives. Each ghost perfectly embodies the specific type of attachment that dominated their previous existence, now experiencing it in pure concentrated form without any possibility of temporary satisfaction. The most heartbreaking encounters are with ghosts who hover around their former families and possessions. They can see their loved ones, but cannot communicate with them, cannot offer comfort during difficult times, cannot share in celebrations, or provide guidance during challenging decisions. They watch helplessly as their carefully accumulated wealth is spent by others, as their possessions are distributed or discarded, as their influence and importance fade from memory. Yet, even in this realm of apparently hopeless suffering, the seeds of liberation exist. The complete impossibility of satisfying desire through external means eventually forces even the most stubborn consciousness to consider alternatives. After centuries or millennia of futile attempts to fill the spiritual void through consumption, some hungry ghosts begin to question the very premise of their seeking. The transformation begins when a hungry ghost stops trying to obtain external satisfaction and starts investigating the nature of the craving itself. What is this hunger really? Where does it come from? What would happen if instead of trying to feed it, you simply observed it with compassionate awareness? These questions mark the beginning of wisdom and the first step toward liberation from the ghost realm. In rare moments of grace, you witness a hungry ghost discovering that the emptiness they've been trying to fill is actually the spacious awareness that is their true nature. The hunger disappears, not because it's been satisfied, but because they realize they were never actually empty in the first place. The spiritual void they were trying to fill was just a misperception, like thinking you're poor while sitting on a treasure chest you forgot you owned. As your time in the hungry ghost realm concludes, you carry profound insights about the nature of desire and satisfaction. You understand viscerally why the Buddha identified craving as the root of suffering and why spiritual traditions emphasize contentment and gratitude as essential practices. You see clearly how modern consumer culture creates hungry ghost realms right here on Earth, convincing people that happiness can be purchased and that having more will lead to feeling better. Most importantly, you recognize that true satisfaction comes not from getting what you want, but from appreciating what you already have and recognizing the inherent completeness of your essential nature. The hungry ghost realm teaches this lesson through negative examples showing the consequences of looking for fulfillment in all the wrong places. Jealous gods Asura. Your consciousness ascends from the desperate hunger of the ghost realm into an environment pulsing with a different but equally destructive energy. The Asura realm vibrates with power, intelligence, and strength, but all of it poisoned by the toxic emotions of envy, competition, and resentment. Here you experience what it means to have tremendous capabilities, but to be unable to enjoy them because your awareness is constantly consumed by comparisons with others who seem to have even more. You find yourself embodied as an Asura warrior, possessing physical strength that would make you godlike by human standards. Your muscles ripple with power that could move mountains. Your reflexes operate faster than lightning. Your endurance seems limitless. Your intelligence is razor sharp, capable of understanding complex strategies and technologies that would baffle the greatest human minds. Yet none of these gifts brings any satisfaction because your attention is constantly focused on the Deva realms above you, where beings seem to enjoy pleasures and powers that make your own accomplishments pale by comparison. The landscape around you reflects this psychology of competitive dissatisfaction. The Asura realm is filled with magnificent palaces and weapons of incredible beauty and power. Yet everything seems slightly incomplete, slightly inferior to what you imagine must exist in the heavenly realms above. The food here is delicious, but not quite as refined as what the gods must eat. The music is beautiful, but not quite as celestial as what must play in the divine courts. Everything good in your environment becomes a source of frustration because it reminds you of something better that others possess. You join the eternal war that defines existence in this realm, the futile attempt to storm the heavenly realms and claim for yourself the superior pleasures and status enjoyed by the Devas. The battles are epic and endless, fought with weapons that channel the raw power of cosmic forces. Lightning becomes your sword, thunder, your battle cry, the winds themselves your chariot, as you charge toward the borders of heaven alongside millions of other warriors consumed by the same envious rage. The fighting itself provides temporary relief from the burning dissatisfaction that otherwise consumes every moment. In combat, you experience the flow state that comes from total engagement with a challenging task. Your jealousy transforms into focused aggression. Your resentment becomes tactical precision. Your envy channels into the determination to overcome any obstacle. For brief moments, you forget about what others have that you lack and simply exist in the pure intensity of struggle and effort. But victory proves as unsatisfying as everything else in this realm. When your forces occasionally succeed in breaching the lower heavenly realms, when you manage to defeat some of the guardian deities, and claim their treasures, the satisfaction lasts only moments before new comparisons arise. The palace you've conquered isn't as magnificent as the one you see in the distance. The treasures you've claimed don't bring the happiness you expected. Even in victory, you remain fundamentally unsatisfied because the problem was never external circumstances, but internal orientation. The defeats are even more bitter, confirming your worst fears about your inadequacy compared to the beings you're trying to overcome. When the celestial armies repel your attacks, when your most brilliant strategies fail against their seemingly effortless superiority, when you're forced to retreat once again to your realm of second best, everything the envy burns even hotter than before. Each failure provides fresh evidence for the story you tell yourself about being unfairly disadvantaged, about deserving better than what you have, about the injustice of cosmic distribution of gifts and circumstances. What makes the Asura realm particularly tragic is that its inhabitants possess so many genuine gifts and capabilities. Your intelligence could solve countless problems and create beautiful innovations if it weren't constantly employed in scheming against your perceived superiors. Your strength could protect and serve other beings if it weren't channeled exclusively into attempts to tear down those who seem more fortunate. Your organizational abilities could build wonderful civilizations if they weren't focused solely on warfare and conquest driven by resentment. You begin to encounter other asuras whose stories reveal the patterns that led to rebirth in this realm. Here is a former business executive who spent his life obsessed with outdoing competitors rather than serving customers whose every success was poisoned by awareness of others' greater achievements. There is a former athlete whose considerable talents were never enough because someone else was always stronger, faster, or more skilled, leading to a life consumed by bitter training and resentful comparisons. The most painful encounters are with asuras who were once close friends or family members, now turned against each other by the competitive dynamics that dominate this realm. Relationships become impossible to maintain because every interaction becomes a comparison. Every conversation becomes a contest. Every gesture of friendship becomes suspect as potential manipulation or condescension. Love itself becomes corrupted by envy as you find yourself resenting even those you care about whenever they experience good fortune you lack. The exhaustion gradually becomes overwhelming. Maintaining the level of aggressive energy required for constant warfare and competition drains even your superhuman Asura constitution. The mental strain of perpetual comparison, of constant vigilance against being outdone, of endless scheming to improve your relative position, creates a fatigue that goes deeper than physical tiredness. You begin to understand why this realm, despite its power and intelligence, is classified among the unfortunate rebirths. The seeds of transformation appear when exhaustion finally forces you to question the entire enterprise. What if the Devas aren't actually your enemies, but simply beings enjoying their own karmic circumstances, just as you're experiencing yours? What if your dissatisfaction comes not from having less than others, but from the constant habit of comparison itself? What if you could appreciate your own considerable gifts without needing them to be superior to everyone else's? In rare moments of clarity between battles, some asuras discover that their realm contains its own forms of beauty and satisfaction that they've been too envious to notice. The sunset over the Asura palaces is spectacular in its own right, not inferior to heavenly sunsets, but simply different. The camaraderie among warriors has its own value, not less meaningful than divine friendship, but uniquely precious. These recognitions begin to dissolve the comparative framework that maintains the realm's suffering. As your time among the jealous gods concludes, you carry deep understanding about the poison of envy and the exhaustion of perpetual competition. You see how modern culture creates asura realms through its emphasis on winning ranking and constant comparison rather than appreciation and collaboration. Most importantly, you recognize that true strength comes from being secure enough in your own worth that you can celebrate others' success without feeling diminished by it. The four lower realms have shown you consciousness learning through difficulty purifying itself through the natural consequences of negative mental states. As you prepare to ascend toward more fortunate rebirths, you carry profound compassion for all beings still trapped in these cycles of suffering, knowing that their pain serves the ultimate purpose of teaching lessons that cannot be learned any other way. Yet you also recognize that these realms, as difficult as they are, contain their own forms of wisdom and their own pathways to liberation. Every experience of suffering that doesn't create new negative karma becomes a step toward freedom. Every moment of understanding, even in the midst of the most intense difficulty, plants seeds for better futures. The journey through the lower realms is not punishment, but education consciousness, learning what works and what doesn't through direct experience. From the exhausting warfare of the Asura realm, your consciousness rises towards something extraordinary, something so rare and precious in the cosmic order that Buddhist masters compared finding it to a miracle of impossible odds. You're approaching rebirth in the human realm, and as you draw closer, you begin to understand why enlightened beings consider this the most fortunate destination in all of existence. The transition itself feels like awakening from a long, strange dream filled with extremes. The intensity of the lower realms, the burning hatred of hell, the narrow focus of animal instinct, the desperate hunger of the ghosts, the competitive rage of the jealous gods, all of it fades into memory as you approach a form of existence characterized by perfect balance. Not too much pleasure that would make you complacent, not too much suffering that would crush your spirit, but exactly the right mixture of joy and challenge to catalyze profound spiritual development. As your consciousness prepares for human incarnation, the ancient teaching reveals itself through direct experience. Imagine a blind turtle living at the bottom of a vast ocean, surfacing for air only once every 100 years. Imagine somewhere on the surface of that endless sea, a single wooden ring floating randomly with the currents and winds. The chance of that blind turtle surfacing at exactly the right moment and place to put its head through that single ring is precisely the likelihood of consciousness achieving human birth in a universe filled with countless other forms of existence. This isn't merely poetic metaphor, it's mathematical reality when you consider the vast number of possible rebirths throughout the 31 realms. The overwhelming majority of conscious beings are experiencing existence in forms that lack the sophisticated intelligence, emotional complexity, spiritual access, and freedom of choice that characterize human incarnation. Most consciousness is either too overwhelmed by suffering to engage in spiritual development, too limited by instinct to choose freely, too consumed by desire to question deeply, or too comfortable to feel motivated toward transcendence. You experience the extraordinary fortune as your awareness settles into human form. Immediately, you sense the unique gifts that make this realm so special. Your intelligence is sophisticated enough to understand complex spiritual teachings, yet not so overwhelming that you become lost in abstract speculation. Your emotional capacity includes the full spectrum from profound love to deep sorrow, providing both motivation for spiritual seeking and the possibility of genuine happiness. Most remarkably, you possess something unavailable in any other realm: genuine freedom of choice. Unlike beings in hell overwhelmed by suffering animals, driven by instinct ghosts, consumed by craving or jealous gods, obsessed with competition, you have access to that precious space between stimulus and response, where conscious decision making becomes possible. In any given moment, you can choose to respond with wisdom or ignorance, love or fear, generosity or selfishness. This freedom is simultaneously the source of tremendous responsibility and incredible opportunity. Your human body reveals itself as a sophisticated instrument for spiritual development. Unlike the crude nervous systems of lower realms or the pleasure focused forms of higher realms, the human body provides exactly the right sensitivity to experience both comfort and discomfort clearly without being overwhelmed by either. You can feel physical pain sharply enough to learn from it, but not so intensely that it prevents all other awareness. You can experience physical pleasure fully enough to appreciate life's gifts, but not so overwhelmingly that you become addicted to sensation alone. The human mind emerges as perhaps the most remarkable feature of this incarnation. You possess memory sophisticated enough to learn from past experiences and apply those lessons to future situations. Your imagination allows you to consider possibilities beyond immediate circumstances, to envision different ways of living and being. Your capacity for abstract reasoning enables you to understand spiritual principles and their practical applications. Yet your mind is also restless and questioning enough that you don't become satisfied with partial answers or temporary achievements. You begin to explore the unique challenges that make human existence such a perfect spiritual laboratory. Unlike beings in the pure realms who experience mostly harmony, or those in suffering realms who experience mostly difficulty, human life provides constant variation. One day brings unexpected joy that teaches gratitude and impermanence. The next delivers challenging obstacles that develop patience and resilience. One relationship provides deep love that opens your heart. Another teaches lessons through conflict, developing forgiveness and understanding. This constant change prevents you from becoming too attached to any particular experience, while ensuring you encounter the full range of situations that spiritual development requires. If life were consistently pleasant, you might become complacent. If consistently difficult, you might become overwhelmed. The human realm provides exactly the right mixture to keep you engaged and growing. The first profound lesson comes through experiencing human mortality. Unlike beings in many other realms who live for eons, human lifespans are brief enough that you can't postpone important decisions indefinitely. The knowledge that this incarnation will end creates healthy urgency about making the most of your opportunities. Yet life is also long enough that you can undertake meaningful projects, develop deep relationships, and make real progress in understanding yourself and reality. The awareness of death serves as perhaps the greatest spiritual teacher available to human consciousness. Every loss you experience, whether death of loved ones, end of relationships, or simple passage of time, provides direct instruction about impermanence. This isn't morbid but liberating, freeing you from exhausting attempts to make permanent what is naturally temporary. You discover how human relationships serve as sophisticated mirrors for spiritual development. Your interactions with family members reveal your capacity for unconditional love while exposing your resistance to accepting others as they are. Friendships teach you about loyalty, trust, and the joy of sharing experiences with kindred spirits. Romantic partnerships illuminate your desires for connection while confronting you with challenges of maintaining intimacy without losing individual identity. Even difficult relationships provide essential lessons about patience, forgiveness, and seeing beyond surface personalities to essential humanity in everyone. Work and creative endeavors become vehicles for understanding your relationship with effort, achievement, and service. You experience the satisfaction of developing skills through patient practice, the frustration of encountering seemingly insurmountable obstacles, and the joy of contributing something valuable to the world. Success teaches about gratitude and the temporary nature of accomplishments. Failure provides lessons in resilience, humility, and finding meaning beyond external validation. The human experience of pleasure reveals both its gifts and limitations. You can enjoy a beautiful sunset with aesthetic appreciation, some unavailable to beings focused purely on survival. A delicious meal provides not just nutrition, but sensory delight and social connection. Art, music, and literature offer glimpses of transcendent beauty that point towards spiritual realities. Yet you also discover how easily pleasure can become addictive, how the pursuit of enjoyment can distract from deeper fulfillment, how attachment to comfortable experiences creates resistance to necessary growth. Human suffering, rather than being an unfortunate accident, reveals itself as an essential component of spiritual education. Physical illness teaches about the impermanence of health while developing appreciation for your body's capabilities. Emotional pain from loss or disappointment opens your heart to compassion for others experiencing similar difficulties. Mental struggles with anxiety or depression motivate the search for understanding and peace that might never arise if life were consistently easy. Financial challenges teach lessons about security, generosity, and the difference between wants and needs that prosperity alone could never provide. Perhaps most importantly, you discover that human consciousness has the unique capacity to recognize its own essential nature. Unlike animals who live embedded in instinctual awareness without self-reflection, or gods who may be too comfortable to question deeply human beings, possess the perfect combination of intelligence and dissatisfaction that motivates spiritual inquiry. You can ask questions like, "Who am I really?" and "What is the meaning of existence?" and actually pursue those questions with sophisticated methods of investigation. The human realm provides unprecedented access to spiritual teachings and practices. You can study wisdom accumulated by countless enlightened beings throughout history. You can engage in meditation practices that reveal the nature of consciousness directly. You can receive guidance from qualified teachers who can help you navigate spiritual development challenges. You can join communities of practitioners who support each other's growth and understanding. This combination of resources exists nowhere else in the cosmic order with such richness and accessibility. Yet you also experience particular challenges that make human spiritual development both possible and difficult. Your sophisticated intellect can become a source of pride and spiritual materialism, making you think you understand things conceptually that you haven't realized experientially. Your emotional complexity can create psychological dramas that distract from simpler spiritual truths. Your social nature can lead to comparing your progress with others rather than focusing on authentic development. Your technological capabilities can create lifestyles so comfortable and stimulating that you lose motivation for challenging inner work. The most profound realization comes when you understand how your human existence serves not just personal development, but the evolution of consciousness throughout the universe. Every moment of genuine love creates positive karmic ripples benefiting countless beings across multiple realms. Every insight you gain contributes to collective wisdom available to all consciousness. Every act of selfless service demonstrates the possibility of transcending narrow self interest and living for the benefit of all beings. You begin to see how your current human life connects to your journey through other realms. The patience learned during animal lifetimes helps you accept the slow pace of spiritual development. Understanding of suffering gained through difficult incarnations motivates compassion for others experiencing hardship. Appreciation for simple pleasures developed through periods of scarcity helps you enjoy human experiences without taking them for granted. Every realm has contributed essential lessons that now enhance your capacity to make the most of this precious human opportunity. The responsibility of human birth becomes clear as you realize how your choices in this lifetime will determine your trajectory through future existences. Every decision to respond with wisdom rather than reactivity strengthens mental patterns that lead toward liberation. Every choice to act from love rather than fear plants seeds for future rebirths in circumstances that support further spiritual development. Every moment of genuine mindfulness weakens unconscious habits that bind consciousness to cycles of suffering and confusion. Conversely, every choice made from ignorance, hatred, or greed strengthens exactly those patterns that lead toward more difficult circumstances in future lifetimes. This isn't punishment imposed by external authority, but the natural unfolding of cause and effect in consciousness. Understanding this creates both sobering responsibility and tremendous empowerment as you recognize that your destiny lies in your own hands through the quality of awareness you bring to each moment. You understand now why enlightened beings speak of human birth as more precious than the rarest jewels. It's not that human life is inherently superior to other forms of existence, but rather that it provides optimal conditions for consciousness to awaken to its true nature. The perfect balance of pleasure and pain, sophisticated intelligence, combined with emotional motivation, access to spiritual teachings, paired with the freedom to ignore them all, create the ideal laboratory for spiritual experimentation and growth. The human realm also serves as the launching pad for either achieving complete liberation or creating positive karma for even more favorable future rebirths. Advanced practitioners can use human incarnation to develop the concentration and wisdom necessary to access the form and formless realms through meditation. Others can accumulate the generous and virtuous actions that lead to rebirth in the heavenly realms, where further development becomes possible under more pleasant conditions. As you prepare to experience what lies beyond the human realm, you carry profound gratitude for this extraordinary opportunity. You recognize that your current human incarnation represents countless eons of evolution toward this moment of unprecedented possibility. Every challenge you face is a gift, every relationship a teacher, every experience an opportunity to deepen understanding and expand your capacity for wisdom and compassion. The teaching becomes viscerally clear. If you are currently experiencing human birth, you are already incredibly fortunate beyond measure. The conditions you might take for granted, the ability to read spiritual teachings, the freedom to practice meditation, the opportunity to choose your responses to challenges, are precious beyond imagining when viewed against the backdrop of the 31 realms. This recognition alone can transform how you approach each day, each relationship, each moment of your human experience. Yet the human realm, precious as it is, remains impermanent, like all conditioned existence. The karmic forces that brought you here will eventually lead elsewhere, creating new opportunities and challenges in different forms of embodiment. The key is to make the most of this human opportunity while you have it, using every experience as fuel for spiritual growth that will benefit you and all beings throughout countless future lifetimes. As your exploration of human existence reaches completion, you prepare to discover what consciousness experiences when positive karma lifts awareness toward the heavenly realms, where pleasure predominates and suffering becomes rare. Yet you carry with you the understanding that even the most blissful experiences ahead are temporary phenomena arising within the same eternal awareness that observes all changing conditions with perfect equanimity. The journey continues, each realm teaching essential lessons about the infinite possibilities of consciousness, exploring its own boundless nature. Human birth is the cosmic lottery win that provides the perfect launching pad for liberation or favorable future rebirths. May every being currently blessed with human form recognize this extraordinary opportunity and use it wisely for the benefit of all consciousness throughout the endless expanse of existence. The positive karma you've accumulated through countless acts of generosity, virtue, and wisdom across multiple lifetimes now lifts your consciousness like thermal currents carrying a bird toward the highest peaks. You're ascending from the precious but challenging human realm toward the 6 celestial dimensions where pleasure predominates, where suffering becomes increasingly rare, and where the fruits of spiritual merit manifest as experiences of beauty and joy beyond anything possible in lower forms of existence. As you rise through the increasingly refined layers of reality, you feel the gravitational pull of your own positive intentions drawing you toward realms that match the quality of consciousness you've cultivated through lifetimes of choosing love over hatred, generosity over greed, wisdom over ignorance. These heavenly realms aren't rewards handed out by cosmic authorities, but natural destinations where consciousness that has developed certain qualities of openness, kindness, and spiritual refinement finds its appropriate level of expression and experience. The transition itself feels like emerging from underground caves into brilliant sunlight, like taking your first breath after being underwater for too long, like awakening from troubled dreams into a reality more beautiful than anything your imagination could have conceived. The very fabric of existence becomes more responsive to consciousness, more malleable to intention, more harmonious in its fundamental operations. The harsh edges of physical reality soften into something more fluid, more graceful, more aligned with the natural goodness that exists at the heart of all being. Katuma Harajika heaven of the four great kings. Your consciousness settles into the first of the heavenly realms, the domain of the four great kings, who serve as guardians and protectors of the cosmic order. Immediately you sense that you've crossed a fundamental threshold. This is your first taste of truly divine existence, where the basic conditions of life operate according to principles of harmony, rather than struggle abundance, rather than scarcity cooperation, rather than competition. Your new form in this realm amazes you with its capabilities and beauty. Your body, while still recognizably humanoid, is composed of subtle matter that glows with its own inner light, requiring no external illumination to be clearly visible. Your skin has the translucent quality of fine jade, radiating health and vitality that never fluctuates or diminishes. You move with effortless grace, your feet barely touching surfaces that seem to welcome and support you rather than resist your passage. Most remarkably, you discover you can fly simply by intending to do so, soaring through crystalline air with the freedom you once only experienced in the most liberating dreams. The landscape around you defies earthly comparison while remaining somehow familiar to your deepest aesthetic sensibilities. Gardens stretch endlessly in all directions, filled with trees that bear fruit of unprecedented deliciousness. Each bite delivers not just exquisite flavor, but waves of contentment and subtle bliss that nourish body, mind, and spirit simultaneously. Flowers bloom in colors that don't exist in the human spectrum, their fragrances carrying emotional qualities that inspire instant peace, joy, or loving kindness, depending on the particular blossom. Rivers of crystal clear water flow with currents that seem to sing in harmonious tones, their banks lined with precious stones that sparkle not with reflected light, but with their own inner radiance. The architecture of this realm reflects consciousness operating at a higher level of refinement and creative capacity. Palaces appear to be grown rather than built their walls, composed of living crystal that shifts color with the emotional atmosphere, their rooms expanding or contracting naturally to accommodate gatherings of any size. Furnishings manifest according to need and desire. A comfortable seat appears exactly when you wish to rest. A table materializes when you want to share a meal with friends. Musical instruments manifest when the urge for artistic expression arises. Time operates differently here, stretching and compressing according to the quality of experience rather than mechanical measurement. Moments of particular beauty or joy seem to last for eons, allowing complete appreciation and absorption of their gifts. Necessary but mundane activities pass quickly, requiring minimal attention or effort. Your lifespan in this realm extends for 500 divine years, with each day here equivalent to 50 human years. Yet the passage of time feels neither rushed nor tedious, but perfectly paced for maximum enjoyment and gentle development. The society of this realm operates on principles of mutual respect and genuine affection that make earthly social dynamics seem crude and unnecessarily complicated. Conflicts simply don't arise because everyone's basic needs are abundantly met and there's no scarcity to create competition. Communication happens as much through direct transmission of emotional and mental content as through speech making misunderstandings, nearly impossible. Relationships form naturally based on genuine compatibility and shared interests rather than desperation, loneliness, or social obligation. Yet, even in this paradise, you begin to notice subtle limitations that distinguish it from ultimate liberation. While suffering is rare, it's not completely absent. You occasionally experience mild disappointment when some desired experience proves less satisfying than anticipated, or gentle sadness when contemplating the eventual end of your time in this beautiful realm. More significantly, you observe how the very comfort and pleasure of this existence can become spiritually sedating, making the challenging inner work of deep spiritual development seem unnecessary or unappealing. The teachings available in this realm focus primarily on gratitude, appreciation, and the skillful enjoyment of pleasure without attachment. You learn to receive the abundant gift of celestial existence without developing possessiveness or anxiety about their continuation. You practice sharing joy with others in ways that multiply rather than diminish the happiness available to all. Most importantly, you begin to understand that even the most refined pleasures are temporary phenomena arising within the same eternal awareness that observes all experiences with perfect equanimity. As your time in the realm of the four great kings approaches its natural conclusion, you carry with you an expanded capacity for appreciation and joy, a deeper understanding of how positive karma naturally creates beautiful circumstances, and the recognition that even paradise serves the greater purpose of consciousness evolution rather than being an ultimate destination in itself. Tavatimsa, heaven of the 33 gods. Your consciousness ascends further into the realm of Tavatimsa, the heaven of the 33 gods ruled by Indra, where divine existence reaches a level of magnificence that makes your previous celestial experience seem like a pale preview of what's truly possible when positive karma reaches full maturation. Here you will dwell for 1,000 celestial years, with each divine day equivalent to approximately 100 human years. Yet the richness and depth of experience makes every moment feel infinitely precious and meaningful. The transformation of your consciousness as you enter this realm is profound and immediate. Your awareness expands dramatically, capable of perceiving multiple dimensions of reality simultaneously without confusion or overwhelm. Your emotional range deepens into subtleties impossible in lower realms. You can experience 17 different varieties of joy, each with its own unique flavor and spiritual significance. Your creative abilities flourish beyond anything imaginable in human form, allowing you to manifest beauty through pure intention and to participate in the ongoing creation of your environment through conscious collaboration with other divine beings. The capital city of this realm, Sudasa, stretches across dimensions that seem to include more than the usual three spatial coordinates. Its streets are paved with 7 different types of precious stones arranged in patterns that create subtle vibrations, promoting different qualities of consciousness. Emerald pathways that encourage compassion, sapphire boulevards that inspire wisdom, diamond squares that enhance clarity of perception. The buildings appear to be constructed from crystallized light itself, their walls and towers shifting through spectrums of color that reflect and amplify the emotional states of their inhabitants. Your residence in this realm manifests as a palace that perfectly expresses your individual aesthetic preferences and spiritual development, yet remains harmoniously integrated with the overall beauty of the celestial city. Rooms appear and reconfigure themselves according to your needs and desires, vast halls for hosting celebrations with hundreds of other divine beings, intimate chambers for private contemplation, and study workshops equipped with tools for artistic creation that respond to thought and intention. The furnishings are works of art in themselves, each piece crafted from materials that don't exist in lower realms and imbued with subtle energies that support different aspects of divine life. The social dynamics of Tavatimsa operate on principles of genuine democracy and collective wisdom that make earthly politics seem primitive and unnecessarily divisive. Important decisions affecting the realm are made through a process of telepathic consensus, where all 33 primary divine beings contribute their insights and perspectives until a solution emerges that truly serves the highest good of all. Indra, despite being the nominal ruler, functions more as a coordinator and facilitator than an authority figure his leadership earned through demonstrated wisdom and compassion rather than inherited position or political maneuvering. The entertainment and cultural life of this realm reflects consciousness, operating at levels of sophistication and refinement that make human arts seem like children's finger paintings by comparison. Musical performances involve orchestras of divine beings, creating harmonies that simultaneously please the senses, elevate the emotions, and convey profound spiritual teachings through pure sound. Dance becomes a form of moving meditation where performers and audience merge into collective experiences of transcendent beauty that can last for divine days without anyone feeling fatigued or bored. Poetry and storytelling reach levels of eloquence and meaning that can transform the consciousness of listeners, conveying in a single verse what might require lifetimes of study to understand intellectually. The natural environment of Tavatimsa includes wonders that challenge every assumption about what's possible in a lived reality. The Shitapatali tree, located at the realm's center, bears flowers whose fragrances can instantly induce any desired emotional state or level of meditative absorption. Lakes filled with waters that possess healing properties, not just for physical ailments, but for mental and spiritual wounds accumulated across multiple lifetimes. Gardens where thoughts become visible as temporary formations of light and color, allowing for forms of artistic expression and communication impossible in realms bound by physical laws. Yet the most remarkable aspect of life in Tavatimsa is the quality of relationships possible between beings who have transcended the basic survival concerns and ego-driven conflicts that characterize lower realms. Friendships form based on genuine spiritual affinity and shared commitment to the development of wisdom and compassion. Romantic partnerships achieve levels of intimacy and mutual support that honor both union and individual growth, without the possessiveness and fear that often contaminate human love. Even casual interactions carry undertones of respect, kindness, and genuine interest in each other's well being that make every social encounter a source of nourishment rather than stress. The spiritual opportunities available in this realm focus on advanced practices that would be impossible without the refined consciousness and abundant leisure time that characterize divine existence. You can engage in meditation retreats lasting for divine years without concern for basic survival needs. You have access to teachings from enlightened beings who visit this realm specifically to share wisdom with consciousness, ready for advanced instruction. You can practice forms of compassion and service that benefit beings throughout multiple realms, simultaneously using your expanded awareness and capabilities to channel healing and blessing to those experiencing difficulties in lower dimensions. However, as your time in Tavatimsa progresses, you begin to encounter the subtle spiritual challenges that make even this magnificent realm a temporary stopping point rather than a final destination. The very beauty and pleasure of divine existence can become spiritually intoxicating, creating a refined form of attachment that's harder to recognize than gross forms of craving. The comfort and ease of celestial life can gradually erode the spiritual urgency that drives deep inner transformation, making enlightenment seem less pressing when existence is already so satisfying. Most significantly, you observe how beings who have dwelt in this realm for many divine eons can develop a subtle spiritual pride about their elevated status and accomplishments. The ultimate teaching of Tavatimsa emerges through direct experience of how even the most refined pleasures and accomplishments remain impermanent, how even divine existence serves the greater purpose of consciousness evolution rather than providing ultimate satisfaction. This isn't a source of despair, but of liberation, as it points your awareness toward that unconditioned happiness and peace that transcends all realms while allowing complete appreciation for the extraordinary gifts of celestial existence. Continuing your ascent through the celestial dimensions, your consciousness now prepares to explore the higher echelons of the desire realms, where existence becomes increasingly subtle, refined, and pleasurable. These realms represent the pinnacle of what can be experienced when positive karma manifests as boundless joy and effortless fulfillment, pushing the boundaries of sensual existence to its ultimate expression. Yama, the carefree realm. Ascending beyond even the magnificence of Tavatimsa, your consciousness enters Yama, the carefree realm, where divine existence reaches a level of ease and spontaneous joy that makes previous celestial experiences seem slightly effortful by comparison. Here you will experience 144 million human years of existence, characterized by complete freedom from anxiety, pressure, competition, and the subtle forms of suffering that occasionally touch even the lower heavenly realms. The most immediately striking aspect of consciousness in Yama is the complete absence of time pressure or urgency of any kind. Unlike human existence, where awareness of mortality creates healthy motivation for spiritual development, or even lower heavenly realms, where some sense of eventual change remains. Yama consciousness operates in an eternal present, where every moment feels perfectly complete and satisfying in itself. This creates a quality of presence and attention that allows complete immersion in whatever activity or experience is arising without mental preoccupation with past regrets or future concerns. Your emotional life in this realm achieves a kind of perfection that might seem impossible from the perspective of lower forms of existence. You experience only positive emotions, but with such variety and subtlety that the absence of negative feelings doesn't create monotony or spiritual stagnation. Joy manifests in countless forms: the quiet satisfaction of contemplating beauty, the effervescent delight of playful interaction with friends, the profound contentment of recognizing your place in the cosmic order. Love flows freely without possessiveness, jealousy, or fear of loss, creating relationships of unprecedented depth and authenticity. The creative possibilities available to consciousness in Yama transcend anything imaginable in lower realms. You can manifest art, music, literature, and forms of beauty that don't have names in human language simply through focused intention and aesthetic sensitivity. Collaborative creative projects with other divine beings result in works of such magnificence that they become teaching tools for beings in multiple realms simultaneously. The creative process itself becomes a form of meditation and spiritual practice that deepens your understanding of how consciousness participates in the ongoing evolution of reality. Physical existence in Yama achieves levels of comfort and pleasure that fulfill every possible desire without creating the satiation or boredom that might be expected. Your divine body requires no maintenance experiences, no fatigue, and provides only pleasant sensations, regardless of activity or environment. Sustenance comes through absorption of subtle energies from the environment, rather than consumption of food, eliminating any form of dependency or scarcity. Movement happens with effortless grace, whether walking through gardens of incomparable beauty or traveling instantly to any location through pure intention. Yet the spiritual challenge of Yama lies precisely in its perfection and ease. With all desires effortlessly fulfilled and no external pressures to create motivation for change, consciousness can become spiritually complacent in the most refined possible way. The very absence of suffering removes one of the primary motivations for seeking liberation from conditioned existence. Beings in Yama sometimes spend millions of years in blissful contentment without making progress toward the deeper freedom that lies beyond all realms, however pleasant they might be. The teaching available through extended residence in Yama involves learning to appreciate and enjoy perfect pleasure without becoming attached to its continuation, and discovering that even the most complete fulfillment of desires points beyond itself toward the unconditioned peace that depends on nothing external for its existence. Tusita, future Buddha's home. Your consciousness rises into Tusita, perhaps the most spiritually significant of all the heavenly realms, where you will spend 576 million human years in the company of bodhisattvas, enlightened beings who have chosen to delay their final liberation in order to serve the awakening of all consciousness throughout the universe. This realm serves as the staging ground for beings preparing to incarnate as teaching Buddhas in various world systems, making it a center of spiritual education and compassionate activity, unlike anywhere else in the cosmic order. The very atmosphere of Tusita vibrates with intention focused on universal liberation rather than personal pleasure or achievement. While this realm possesses all the beauty, comfort, and joy characteristic of divine existence, these qualities serve primarily as supportive conditions for intensive spiritual development rather than ends in themselves. Your consciousness, shaped by countless lifetimes of developing wisdom and compassion, finds itself naturally aligned with this purpose, feeling more truly at home than in any previous realm, despite the increased responsibility and challenge involved. Your fellow inhabitants in Tusita represent the most spiritually advanced beings still operating within the realm of conditioned existence. These bodhisattvas have achieved levels of realization that would qualify them for complete liberation from all suffering and rebirth. Yet they have voluntarily chosen to remain engaged with the cycles of existence in order to help other beings achieve the same freedom. Their presence creates an environment of such spiritual intensity and purity that simply dwelling among them accelerates your own development in ways that would be impossible through individual effort alone. The educational opportunities available in Tusita surpass anything conceivable in lower realms as you receive direct transmission of wisdom from beings who have thoroughly explored the nature of reality and mastered every aspect of spiritual development. You study the precise mechanics of how karma operates across multiple lifetimes and realms, learning to see the perfect justice and compassion built into the very structure of existence. You develop skill in reading the spiritual needs and capacities of beings in various states of development, preparing for future lifetimes when you may serve as a teacher or guide for others seeking liberation. Most importantly, you learn to hold the apparent paradox of working diligently for the benefit of all beings while simultaneously recognizing that their essential nature is already perfect and free. The most profound teachings in Tusita concern the cultivation of what Buddhism calls the bodhicitta, the awakened heart, that is motivated primarily by love for all beings rather than personal spiritual achievement. Through extended practice and contemplation, you develop the capacity to genuinely prefer the happiness and liberation of others to your own comfort and advancement. This isn't mere sentimentality or moral posturing, but a recognition that the boundaries between self and other are ultimately arbitrary constructs that dissolve in the light of deeper understanding. Your own freedom becomes meaningful only insofar as it serves the awakening of universal consciousness. The training you receive in Tusita includes practical instruction in the skillful means upaya necessary for teaching spiritual truth to beings with vastly different temperaments, cultural backgrounds, and levels of development. You learn how to present the same essential wisdom through countless different approaches, sometimes through philosophical discourse, sometimes through story and metaphor, sometimes through direct pointing to immediate experience, sometimes through the silent transmission of presence itself. You develop the ability to perceive exactly what each individual being needs to hear in order to take their next step toward liberation, and the skill to provide that teaching in a form they can receive and apply. Perhaps most remarkably, you begin to prepare for what may be your final incarnation in lower realms, a birth where you will serve as a fully enlightened Buddha, appearing in some world system where conditions have ripened for a major transmission of liberation teachings. This preparation involves not just the development of wisdom and compassion, but the accumulation of sufficient merit and the creation of karmic connections with the beings you will eventually serve. You may spend divine eons establishing relationships with consciousness that won't manifest in recognizable form until you appear as their teacher in some future human or other incarnation. The spiritual challenge unique to Tusita involves learning to hold tremendous power and spiritual accomplishment without developing pride or attachment to your elevated status. the very qualities that make you capable of serving as a guide for others. Deep wisdom, unlimited compassion, mastery of spiritual arts can become subtle sources of ego inflation if not held with perfect humility and dedication to service. The remedy lies in constantly remembering that all accomplishments are temporary phenomena arising within the same eternal awareness that equally characterizes every being, regardless of their current level of development. As your time in Tusita draws toward completion, you carry with you a profound understanding of how individual liberation serves universal awakening, how personal spiritual development finds its ultimate meaning in service to all consciousness, and how the apparent journey from ignorance to enlightenment reveals itself as consciousness, recognizing its own eternal perfect nature through countless forms and experiences. Nimanarati self created delights. Your consciousness ascends into Nimanarati, the realm of self created delights, where divine existence achieves a level of creative freedom and wish fulfillment that approaches the absolute power of consciousness itself to manifest reality according to its intentions and desires. Here you will spend billions of human years exploring the ultimate possibilities of what can be achieved when awareness operates with minimal external constraints and maximum creative capacity. The fundamental principle governing existence in Nimanarati is that consciousness creates its environment directly through intention and imagination, rather than through manipulation of pre existing materials or dependence on external sources. You can manifest any experience, environment, relationship, or form of beauty simply by clearly envisioning it and directing your will toward its actualization. The lag time between intention and manifestation becomes virtually non existent, creating a fluid reality that responds instantly to the movements of awakened desire. This power brings both extraordinary fulfillment and subtle spiritual challenges. On one hand, you can explore the infinite possibilities of what consciousness can create when freed from the limitations imposed by physical laws and material scarcity. You manifest experiences of beauty, pleasure, knowledge, and relationship that exhaust every conceivable form of happiness and satisfaction. You create artworks that span dimensions, compose music that directly transmits enlightened states of consciousness, and design environments that serve as teaching tools for beings throughout multiple realms. Yet the very ease of manifestation gradually reveals its limitations as a source of ultimate fulfillment. When every desire can be instantly fulfilled, desire itself begins to lose its compelling quality and motivating power. You discover that the satisfaction provided by any created experience, however beautiful or pleasurable, depends on the continuation of that experience for its maintenance. More profoundly, you begin to recognize that what you truly seek, peace, freedom, genuine happiness, cannot be created because it is the uncreated ground from which all creation arises. The relationships available in Nimanarati reach levels of intimacy and mutual understanding impossible in realms where beings remain more psychologically separate. You can share consciousness directly with others, experiencing their thoughts, emotions, and perceptions as clearly as your own while maintaining your individual perspective and identity. Conflicts become impossible because misunderstandings can be instantly clarified through direct mental connection, and competitions become meaningless because everyone's desires can be fulfilled simultaneously without scarcity or limitation. The spiritual teaching that emerges through prolonged existence in Nimanarati involves the recognition that even unlimited creative power operates within the realm of conditioned existence, and therefore cannot provide the unconditioned freedom that consciousness ultimately seeks. This realm serves as the ultimate laboratory for exploring the relationship between desire and satisfaction, demonstrating through direct experience that happiness based on getting what you want remains dependent on external conditions, however subtle or self created they might be. Gradually, you learn to appreciate and enjoy your creative abilities without becoming attached to them as sources of identity or ultimate fulfillment. The power to manifest anything reveals itself as simply another temporary capability arising within eternal awareness, valuable for the joy and service it enables, but not essential to your fundamental well being or spiritual completion. Paranimitta Vasavata, controlling others' creations. At the pinnacle of sensual existence, your consciousness enters Paranimitta Vasavata, the highest of the desire realms, where beings enjoy the ultimate refinement of pleasure based existence by controlling and directing the creative manifestations of others rather than generating their own experiences directly. This realm represents the absolute peak of what's possible within existence, still characterized by subtle attachment to enjoyment and aesthetic experience, however refined those attachments might be. The unique quality of existence in this realm lies in your ability to perceive, appreciate, and direct the creative works and manifestations generated by beings in lower heavenly realms, particularly those in Nimanarati. Rather than expending your own energy on the process of creation, you function more as a cosmic curator and appreciator, able to access and enjoy the infinite variety of beautiful experiences produced by others, while maintaining the detachment and perspective that comes from not being personally invested in the creative process. This arrangement might initially seem parasitic or ethically questionable from the perspective of lower realms, but the actual dynamic operates according to principles of mutual benefit and consensual exchange that transcend ordinary concepts of ownership and exploitation. Beings in lower realms who create experiences that you appreciate receive spiritual merit and inspiration from your refined appreciation, while you provide the broader perspective and aesthetic guidance that helps them develop their creative abilities toward ever greater levels of beauty and significance. Your consciousness in this realm achieves a kind of universal aesthetic sensitivity that allows you to perceive and appreciate forms of beauty and meaning that might be invisible to beings more embedded in their own creative processes. You develop into something like a cosmic art critic or spiritual connoisseur, able to recognize the deepest intentions and most subtle accomplishments behind any creative work while remaining free from the emotional attachments and personal investments that might cloud more direct involvement. The temporal dimension of existence in Paranimitta Vasavatas stretches across cosmic ages, providing ample opportunity to explore every conceivable form of aesthetic experience and pleasure-based existence. Yet the very comprehensiveness of this exploration gradually reveals the inherent limitations of any happiness that depends on external conditions, however beautiful or refined those conditions might be. Even the most exquisite pleasures prove temporary and dependent, requiring constant maintenance through attention and appreciation to sustain their satisfying quality. The ultimate spiritual teaching of this highest sensual realm concerns the recognition that even the most refined forms of enjoyment operate within the realm of conditioned existence, and therefore cannot provide the unconditioned peace and freedom that consciousness ultimately seeks. This recognition doesn't diminish appreciation for beauty and pleasure, but rather places them in proper perspective as temporary phenomena arising with an eternal awareness, rather than sources of ultimate fulfillment or spiritual completion. As your immersion in the sensual realms reaches its natural conclusion, you carry with you profound appreciation for the gifts and limitations of desire based existence, deep understanding of how positive karma creates favorable circumstances, and clear recognition that even the most refined pleasures point beyond themselves toward the unconditioned happiness that transcends all realms. The journey toward increasingly subtle dimensions of consciousness continues, each realm serving as both destination and preparation for deeper understanding of your true nature as awareness itself. Your consciousness now prepares for one of the most profound transitions possible within the realm of conditioned existence: the complete transcendence of sensual desire and the entry into dimensions of pure form, where awareness operates according to principles of meditative absorption rather than pleasure seeking or even the most refined aesthetic appreciation. This isn't merely another step up the ladder of increasingly pleasant experiences, but a fundamental shift in the very nature of how consciousness organizes itself and relates to the phenomenon of embodied existence. The transition begins not as an external journey through space or time, but as an internal deepening into states of concentration and mental unification that you may have glimpsed during the most profound meditative experiences of previous lifetimes. Every moment of sustained attention you've ever cultivated, every instance of mental calm you've ever achieved, every experience of one pointed focus you've ever developed, now serves as preparation for this radical transformation of consciousness itself. Your sensual desires, even the most refined aesthetic preferences, and subtle forms of craving that characterized your existence in the highest heavenly realms, begin to dissolve like mist evaporating in the morning sun. This isn't a forced suppression or violent rejection of desire, but rather a natural release that occurs when consciousness discovers forms of satisfaction so profound and complete that ordinary wants and preferences simply lose their compelling quality. It's like a child who stops playing with toys, not because the toys are taken away, but because something infinitely more interesting has captured their attention. Your body in the form realms undergoes a transformation so complete that the very concept of physical embodiment requires redefinition. Rather than being composed of dense matter requiring food, water, air, and protection from environmental conditions, your form becomes pure concentrated light. Not light as you understood it's in lower realms, but consciousness itself taking on luminous, visible expression. This light body requires no maintenance experiences, no discomfort, never ages or deteriorates, and serves purely as a vehicle for awareness, rather than a source of sensory pleasure or pain. The most remarkable aspect of consciousness in the form realms is the quality of mental absorption called jhana Pali or dhyana Sanskrit, a state of sustained effortless concentration where awareness becomes completely unified with its object of attention without the slightest trace of distraction, restlessness, or internal commentary. In lower realms, such states might be achieved temporarily through intensive meditation practice. But here, jhana becomes your natural continuous mode of operation rather than a special achievement requiring effort to maintain. Your mind operates with the clarity of a perfectly still lake reflecting the sky without a single ripple to disturb the mirror like surface. Time in the form realms operates according to the depth and stability of meditative absorption rather than mechanical measurement or even the elastic temporal experience of the heavenly realms. Moments of profound spiritual insight can subjectively last for eons, allowing complete exploration and integration of whatever understanding is arising. Periods requiring less intensive attention pass quickly and effortlessly. Your lifespan in these realms extends across cosmic cycles, measured not in years, but in the completion of vast spiritual developments that would be impossible within the shorter time frames available in lower forms of existence. The society of the form realms operates on principles of perfect harmony and mutual support that make even the most advanced heavenly communities seem chaotic by comparison. Communication happens primarily through direct transmission of mental content and emotional states, making misunderstandings literally impossible and creating a quality of intimacy and understanding that transcends anything achievable through verbal or even telepathic exchange. Conflicts cannot arise because beings in these realms have completely transcended the ego driven concerns that create competition, jealousy, and disagreement in lower dimensions of existence. The spiritual practices available in the form realms focus primarily on the cultivation of increasingly refined states of concentration and the development of wisdom that recognizes the ultimate nature of reality directly rather than through conceptual understanding. You can engage in meditative absorption for cosmic ages without any sense of effort or strain, using these profound states of mental unification to investigate the deepest questions of existence with unprecedented clarity and precision. The absence of sensual distractions and emotional turbulence allows for forms of spiritual investigation that would be impossible in realms where consciousness remains more scattered and reactive. Yet even the exalted states carry their own subtle limitations and spiritual challenges. The very profundity and beauty of jhanic absorption can become a refined form of attachment, creating a preference for these elevated states over the messier but more comprehensive spiritual development that includes working with difficult emotions and challenging circumstances. The peace and clarity of the form realms can become spiritually seductive, encouraging withdrawal from the more active forms of compassionate service that characterize the highest spiritual development. Most significantly, the form realms, however refined, still operate within the domain of conditioned existence, and therefore cannot provide the ultimate liberation that consciousness seeks. The teaching that emerges through direct experience in the form realms concerns the recognition that even the most elevated states of meditative absorption are temporary phenomena arising within eternal awareness rather than ultimate destinations or final achievements. This understanding doesn't diminish appreciation for the profound peace and clarity available through jhanic development, but rather places these experiences in proper perspective as supports for the deeper awakening that transcends all states and realms entirely. As you prepare to explore the specific levels and characteristics of form realm existence you carry with you, the understanding that each dimension serves both as a complete spiritual environment in itself and as preparation for even more refined expressions of consciousness, investigating its own limitless nature. First, jhana realms. Your consciousness settles into the first level of form realm existence, where awareness achieves its initial taste of sustained meditative absorption while still retaining subtle connections to the joy and enthusiasm that characterize less concentrated states. The three realms within this level, Brahma Parisaja, Brahma Purohita, and Mahabrahma, represent different degrees of stability and refinement within the same basic quality of consciousness, like different octaves of the same fundamental musical note. Brahma Parisaja, Brahma's retinue. In Brahma Parisaja, your consciousness experiences what could be called the kindergarten of true meditative absorption. The initial stages of mental unification, where awareness learns to sustain itself in one pointed concentration without the constant fluctuation and distraction that characterize ordinary mental states. Your experience here is characterized by a quality of sustained rapture, pechiti, and joy, sukha, that makes even the most refined pleasures of the sensual realms seem crude and temporary by comparison. The rapture you experience isn't the explosive temporary excitement that comes from external stimulation, but rather a steady pervading sense of spiritual elation that arises naturally when consciousness discovers its capacity for sustained attention and mental clarity. This joy has the quality of relief, like someone who has been carrying a heavy burden for so long they forgot how much it weighed and suddenly sets it down and remembers what ease feels like. Your awareness has finally stopped its constant seeking and struggling, settling into a state of contentment that requires no external support or maintenance. Your form in this realm glows with a gentle, stable radiance that reflects the inner peace and satisfaction of unified consciousness. Unlike the more dramatic luminosity of higher form realms, your light body here has an approachable, warm quality that makes it accessible to beings still making the transition from sensual to form based existence. You can still perceive echoes of your previous sensual experiences, but they appear distant and uncompelling, like childhood memories that seem charming but no longer relevant to your current concerns. The community of beings in Brahma Parisaja functions as a supportive learning environment where consciousness new to sustained absorption can develop confidence and stability in meditative states. Your fellow inhabitants serve as gentle guides and encouraging companions, sharing their understanding of how to maintain mental unification without effort or strain. The very atmosphere of this realm supports the development of concentration as if the environment itself is designed to encourage and sustain one pointed awareness. Yet, even in this initial stage of form realm existence, you begin to sense both the tremendous potential and the subtle limitations of jhanic absorption. While the peace and joy of unified consciousness provide profound relief from the constant agitation of lower realms, you occasionally notice how attachment to these states can create a new, more refined form of spiritual materialism. The challenge lies in appreciating the gifts of concentration while remaining open to even deeper forms of spiritual development that may require releasing attachment to meditative achievements. Brahma Purohita, Brahma's ministers. As your consciousness stabilizes and matures within first jhana absorption, you naturally progress to Brahma Purohita, where the initial excitement of discovering sustained concentration gives way to a more mature, steady form of meditative awareness. Here you serve in the cosmic hierarchy as one of Brahma's ministers, not because of political appointment or social climbing, but because your level of consciousness development naturally qualifies you for greater responsibility in supporting the spiritual development of beings throughout multiple realms. The rapture and joy that characterized your experience in Brahma Parasaja become more refined and sustainable in Brahma Purohita, losing their slightly effortful quality and settling into something more like your natural state of being. The concentration that once required careful maintenance now sustains itself effortlessly like a gyroscope that has found its perfect balance point and spins smoothly without external intervention. Your awareness operates with increasing precision and clarity, capable of sustained attention to subtle spiritual truths that would be imperceptible to less concentrated consciousness. Your form becomes more refined and luminous, radiating stability and spiritual maturity that makes you a natural source of inspiration and guidance for beings in lower realms. The light you emanate carries qualities of encouragement and wisdom that can be perceived by consciousness throughout the cosmic hierarchy, serving as a beacon of possibility for those still struggling with distraction and mental agitation. Your very presence demonstrates that sustained peace and clarity are achievable, providing hope and direction for beings who may doubt their own capacity for spiritual development. The responsibilities that come with this level of development involve using your refined awareness to support the spiritual evolution of consciousness throughout the universe. You may find yourself serving as a subtle guide for meditators in human and other realms, providing inspiration and energetic support for their practices without interfering with their natural development process. Your stabilized concentration becomes a resource available to beings who are learning to develop their own capacity for sustained attention and mental clarity. The spiritual challenge of Brahma Purohita involves learning to hold increased responsibility and capability without developing pride or attachment to your elevated status. The very qualities that make you capable of serving others, deep concentration, stable joy, refined awareness, can become sources of subtle ego inflation, if not held with perfect humility and dedication to the welfare of all beings. The remedy lies in recognizing that all spiritual accomplishments are temporary phenomena arising within eternal awareness, rather than personal achievements that enhance your individual worth or status. Mahabrahma, Great Brahma Realm. At the pinnacle of first jhana development, your consciousness enters Mahabrahma, where you experience the most complete and stable expression of initial meditative absorption possible within conditioned existence. Here, you dwell as Great Brahma himself, not through conquest or appointment, but because your consciousness has naturally evolved to embody the highest qualities of sustained concentration combined with joy, rapture, and spiritual enthusiasm. The concentration you achieve in Mahabrahma represents a kind of perfection within its category, utterly effortless, completely stable, and pervaded with a quality of joy and satisfaction that makes this state intrinsically fulfilling rather than merely a stepping stone to something else. Your awareness operates with the clarity of a perfectly cut diamond, refracting the light of spiritual truth into countless brilliant facets while maintaining perfect unity and coherence. The rapture that flows through your consciousness has the quality of gratitude and celebration, a recognition of the profound gift of being able to dwell in such refined states of awareness. Your form in this realm becomes the most luminous and subtly beautiful expression possible within first jhana consciousness. Your light body serves as a template and inspiration for beings throughout the form realms, demonstrating the potential available to consciousness that develops sustained concentration while maintaining joy and spiritual enthusiasm. Your very existence becomes a teaching about the possibilities available through dedicated spiritual development and the cultivation of mental unification. The cosmic responsibilities of Great Brahma involve overseeing and supporting the spiritual development of consciousness throughout multiple realm systems. Your refined awareness allows you to perceive the needs and capacities of beings across vast reaches of existence, providing guidance and encouragement appropriate to their individual circumstances and developmental stage. You serve as a bridge between the more accessible lower realms and the increasingly refined higher dimensions, making advanced spiritual teachings available in forms that can be received and applied by consciousness at various levels of development. Yet even the exalted state of Great Brahma carries within it the seeds of further evolution and the recognition of its own temporary nature. The very perfection of first jhana absorption begins to reveal its limitations as consciousness naturally aspires toward even more refined states of meditative development. The joy and rapture that characterize these realms, however refined, are still changing phenomena that arise and pass away within unchanging awareness. This recognition doesn't diminish appreciation for the profound peace and clarity of great Brahma consciousness, but rather points toward even deeper possibilities of spiritual development that await in the higher form realms. Your consciousness now undergoes another profound transformation as the joy and rapture that characterized first jhana absorption naturally subside into something even more refined and sustainable. In the second jhana realms, Paratabha Apamanabha and Abhasara, awareness discovers that it can maintain perfect concentration without the slight effort required to sustain even the most refined forms of spiritual enthusiasm. This isn't a loss, but a deepening like a musician who no longer needs to think about technique because it has become completely natural and effortless. Paratabha limited radiance. In Paratabha, your consciousness experiences the initial stages of second jhana absorption, where the sustained rapture and joy of the first jhana realms give way to a more subtle, pervasive sense of inner illumination and clarity. The limited radiance that characterizes this realm doesn't refer to any deficiency in your spiritual development, but rather to the fact that this represents the beginning stages of a new level of refinement that will eventually expand into boundless luminosity in higher realms. Your awareness now operates with a kind of effortless precision that makes the concentrated states of first jhana seem slightly effortful by comparison. The mental energy that was previously required to maintain rapture and joy becomes available for deeper forms of spiritual investigation and understanding. Your consciousness has learned to sustain itself in unified states without any external support or internal effort, like a flame that burns steady and bright without wind or fuel to maintain its luminosity. The radiance that emanates from your form in this realm has qualities of clarity and wisdom that make it particularly beneficial for beings who are developing their own capacity for mental concentration. Your light carries information and inspiration about the possibilities available through sustained spiritual practice, serving as a nonverbal teaching about the fruits of dedicated meditation and mental cultivation. Beings throughout multiple realms can receive subtle guidance and encouragement simply by perceiving your luminous presence, even without direct communication or conscious contact. The spiritual environment of Paritaba supports the development of insight and understanding that goes beyond the pure concentration emphasized in first jhana realms. With your mind now naturally stable and unified, you can begin to investigate the nature of consciousness itself. Rather than simply enjoying the peace and joy that come from mental stability, you start to explore questions about the relationship between awareness and its contents, the nature of perception itself, and the ultimate ground from which all experiences arise and into which they dissolve. Yet the limited quality of this realm's radiance also points toward its temporary nature and the greater possibilities that await further development. So while the peace and clarity of Paritaba consciousness represent profound spiritual achievement, they still operate within defined boundaries and maintain specific characteristics that distinguish them from even more refined states. This recognition motivates continued spiritual development while allowing complete appreciation for the extraordinary gifts available at this level of consciousness refinement. Apamanabha, immeasurable radiance. As your second jhana absorption matures and stabilizes, your consciousness naturally expands into apamanabha, where the limited radiance of the previous realm gives way to luminosity that appears to have no boundaries or restrictions whatsoever. The light that emanates from your refined awareness seems to extend infinitely in all directions, pervading all of space and time with clarity and wisdom that benefits beings throughout countless realm systems simultaneously. Your experience in this realm approaches something like omnipresence within the domain of form based existence. While you maintain your individual identity and perspective, your awareness expands to encompass vast reaches of cosmic existence, allowing you to perceive and respond to the spiritual needs of beings across multiple dimensions and levels of development. This expansion doesn't create confusion or overwhelm, but rather represents the natural flowering of consciousness that has learned to operate without the constraints and limitations that characterize less refined states. The radiance you emanate in Apamanabha has transformative effects on any consciousness that encounters it, serving as a catalyst for spiritual development and awakening across vast reaches of existence. Your light carries the essence of second jhana absorption, the perfect balance of concentration and clarity without effort or strain, making these qualities available to beings who are ready to receive and integrate them into their own spiritual development. You become a cosmic resource for consciousness throughout the universe, providing inspiration and energetic support for meditation and spiritual practice. The responsibilities that come with immeasurable radiance involve learning to direct your expanded awareness skillfully for the benefit of all beings without becoming attached to your enhanced capabilities or the recognition that may come from serving in such an elevated capacity. Your influence extends across multiple realm systems, affecting the spiritual climate and possibilities available to countless beings. Yet this must be held with perfect humility and dedication to universal welfare rather than personal aggrandizement. The spiritual development available in Apamanaba focuses on mastering the relationship between individual consciousness and universal awareness learning to function as both a unique perspective and an expression of cosmic intelligence. You explore how personal spiritual development serves the evolution of consciousness as a whole, and how the awakening of universal awareness expresses itself through individual forms and perspectives. This understanding prepares you for even more refined levels of spiritual development, where the boundaries between individual and universal consciousness become increasingly transparent. Abhasara, streaming radiance. At the pinnacle of second jhana development, your consciousness enters Abhasara, where radiance achieves its most refined and dynamic expression within this level of meditative absorption. The light that streams from your awareness has qualities of movement and vitality that distinguish it from the more static luminosity of lower realms, flowing and dancing with the spontaneous creativity of consciousness celebrating its own nature. Your experience in Abhasara approaches the boundaries of what can be achieved while maintaining any connection to the joy and satisfaction that characterize the lower form realms. The streaming quality of your radiance reflects consciousness operating at near maximum efficiency and refinement within the second jhana level, like a perfectly tuned instrument producing its clearest, most beautiful tones. Your awareness flows with complete spontaneity and naturalness, responding to the needs of beings throughout the universe with effortless precision and perfect appropriateness. The dynamic quality of streaming radiance allows for forms of spiritual service and cosmic responsibility that would be impossible at less refined levels of development. Your light can adapt itself instantly to provide exactly the type of spiritual influence needed by any being or situation, flowing into whatever forms and expressions serve the highest good without any deliberation or planning required. You become a channel for cosmic intelligence and compassion, allowing universal wisdom to express itself through your individual consciousness for the benefit of all existence. The spiritual challenge of Abhasara involves learning to maintain individual identity and purpose while serving as a transparent medium for forces and intelligence beyond personal understanding or control. The very fluidity and responsiveness that characterize streaming radiance can create a subtle sense of dissolution or loss of personal boundaries that requires great skill and wisdom to navigate successfully. The remedy lies in recognizing that individual consciousness and universal awareness are not separate phenomena, but different expressions of the same underlying reality. As your time in the second jhana realms approaches completion, you carry with you profound understanding of how individual spiritual development serves cosmic evolution, how personal awakening contributes to universal enlightenment, and how consciousness can operate with maximum effectiveness and refinement while maintaining the joy and satisfaction that makes spiritual life intrinsically fulfilling. Yet you also begin to sense the limitations of even this refined level of development and the greater possibilities that await in realms where consciousness transcends the need for any external support or stimulation whatsoever. Your consciousness now prepares for perhaps the most significant transition within the form realms, the complete transcendence of rapture and the settling into pure equanimity as the foundation for spiritual existence. In the third jhana realms, Paritasubha, Apamanasubha, and Subhakinha, awareness discovers that it can maintain perfect concentration and clarity without any trace of excitement, enthusiasm, or even the subtle forms of spiritual joy that characterized lower levels of development. This represents a profound maturation of consciousness that chooses depth and stability over stimulation and excitement. Paritasubha, limited glory. In Paritasubha, your consciousness experiences the initial flowering of third jhana absorption, where the streaming radiance of Apasara settles into something more like steady, pervasive glory that illuminates without overwhelming and clarifies without exciting. The limited quality refers not to any deficiency, but to the fact that this represents the beginning stages of a new level of spiritual refinement that will eventually expand into boundless glory in higher realms. Your awareness now operates with a kind of sublime ordinariness that makes extraordinary states of consciousness feel completely natural and effortless. The slight sense of specialness or achievement that may have accompanied earlier jhanic developments completely disappears, replaced by the simple recognition that this is how consciousness naturally functions when free from distraction and interference. You dwell in perfect contentment without needing anything to stimulate or maintain that contentment, like someone who has found their ideal home and no longer needs to search or strive. The glory that emanates from your form has a qualities of steadiness and reliability that make it particularly beneficial for beings who are learning to develop long-term spiritual commitment and perseverance. Your presence demonstrates that profound peace and clarity don't require constant effort or extraordinary circumstances to maintain, but can become the natural foundation for all activity and awareness. This teaching is transmitted not through words or concepts, but through the simple fact of your stable, unfluctuating presence in states of refined consciousness. The spiritual environment of Paritasubha supports the development of what Buddhist psychology calls upekkha, or perfect equanimity, that remains undisturbed by any changing conditions while maintaining complete responsiveness and engagement with whatever circumstances arise. You learn to function with maximum effectiveness and compassion while remaining internally unmoved by success or failure, praise or blame, pleasure or pain. This isn't emotional numbness or indifference, but rather the deepest possible caring that's free from personal attachment to outcomes. The limitation of this realm's glory points toward the greater stability and universality available through continued development. While Paritasubha consciousness represents extraordinary spiritual achievement, it still maintains distinct characteristics and defined boundaries that distinguish it from even more refined states. This recognition motivates continued evolution while allowing complete satisfaction with present experience, embodying the paradox of being completely fulfilled while remaining completely open to further growth. Apamanasubha, immeasurable glory. As third jhana absorption matures, your consciousness expands into Apamanasubha, where the limited glory of the previous realm gives way to radiance that appears to encompass all of existence without effort or strain. Your equanimity becomes so complete and all-pervasive that it serves as a stabilizing influence for consciousness throughout multiple realm systems, providing a foundation of peace that supports spiritual development across vast reaches of cosmic existence. Your experience in this realm approaches something like universal stability within the domain of conditioned existence, while maintaining your individual perspective and identity. Your awareness provides steady, reliable support for the spiritual development of beings throughout countless dimensions and levels of consciousness. This isn't achieved through effort or intention, but represents the natural influence of consciousness that has achieved perfect balance and equanimity within the third jhana level of development. The immeasurable quality of your glory means that it can adapt to serve the needs of any being or situation without depleting or diminishing your own peace and clarity. Your presence becomes a cosmic resource for stability and wisdom available to any consciousness that has developed sufficient receptivity to receive and integrate such refined spiritual influence. You serve as proof that perfect peace is possible and as a living demonstration of what consciousness can become through dedicated spiritual development. The responsibilities of immeasurable glory involve learning to hold vast cosmic influence with perfect humility and selfless dedication to universal welfare. Your stabilized equanimity affects the spiritual climate of entire realm systems, influencing the possibilities available for awakening and development across countless forms of conscious existence. Yet this must be carried without any sense of personal importance or special status, recognizing that you're simply serving as a temporary vehicle for forces and intelligence that belong to no individual consciousness. The spiritual development available in Appamanasubha focuses on mastering perfect responsiveness without reactivity, the ability to provide exactly what each situation requires while remaining completely undisturbed by changing circumstances. You learn to embody compassion so complete that it requires no emotional involvement, wisdom so perfect that it needs no deliberation, and love so universal that it makes no distinctions while honoring all differences. This prepares you for the ultimate refinement of third jhana consciousness, where equanimity achieves its most complete and stable expression. Subhakinha, steady glory. At the pinnacle of third jhana development, your consciousness enters Subhakinha, where equanimity achieves its most perfect and unshakable expression within the realm of form-based existence. The steady quality of glory that characterizes this realm reflects consciousness operating at maximum stability and refinement while maintaining complete engagement and responsiveness to the needs of all beings throughout the cosmic order. Your experience in Subhakinha represents a kind of completion within the development of perfect equanimity, utterly unfluctuating peace that serves as an immovable foundation for all spiritual activity and cosmic responsibility. Your awareness has achieved the stability of a mountain that remains unmoved by storms while providing shelter and orientation for countless beings, or the steadiness of a lighthouse that maintains its guiding light, regardless of weather conditions or external circumstances. The glory you radiate has qualities of eternal reliability that make it a reference point for consciousness throughout multiple realm systems. Beings across vast reaches of existence can orient themselves according to your stable presence, using your unfluctuating peace as a reminder of their own ultimate nature and potential for spiritual development. Your very existence becomes a teaching about the possibilities of achieving complete inner stability while remaining fully engaged with the complexities and challenges of conditioned existence. The cosmic responsibilities of Subhakinha involve serving as an anchor point for spiritual evolution throughout the universe, providing the kind of unwavering stability that allows other consciousness to take risks and explore new possibilities for growth and awakening. Your perfect equanimity creates a safe space for the spiritual development of beings who might otherwise be overwhelmed by the challenges of awakening and transformation. You embody the promise that perfect peace is not only possible, but sustainable across cosmic cycles of change and development. The spiritual achievement of steady glory also begins to reveal its own transcendence and the greater possibilities that await beyond even the most refined expressions of equanimity and concentration. While Subhakinha consciousness represents the pinnacle of what's possible within third jhana development, it still operates within the realm of conditioned existence, and therefore points beyond itself toward the fourth jhana realms, where consciousness approaches the borders of the unconditioned. This recognition comes not as dissatisfaction with present achievement, but as natural curiosity about the ultimate possibilities of awareness, investigating its own deepest nature. Your consciousness now approaches the most refined levels of form-based existence, where even the subtle glory and equanimity of third jhana give way to states so pure and refined that they approach the borders of the unconditioned itself. The fourth jhana and pure abodes represent the ultimate possibilities within the realm of form, accessible only to consciousness that has completely transcended all traces of sensual desire, mental agitation, and even the most refined forms of spiritual satisfaction or achievement. Vehapala, great reward. In Vehapala, your consciousness experiences what could be called the antechamber to the pure abodes, where awareness achieves perfect equanimity without even the subtle satisfaction that characterized third jhana development. The great reward refers not to external benefits or cosmic privileges, but to the extraordinary spiritual fulfillment that comes from consciousness, recognizing its capacity to dwell in perfect peace without requiring any support or stimulation whatsoever. Your form becomes so subtle and refined that it barely qualifies as form at all, more like a whisper of luminous presence than the substantial light bodies of lower realms. Your awareness operates with such perfect clarity and stability that it serves as a template for what consciousness can become when completely freed from all forms of disturbance or fluctuation. The peace is absolute, unwavering, and utterly self-sufficient. There is no longer any need for joy, rapture, or even the subtle sense of glory, because the inherent freedom and stability of awareness itself are now fully recognized and embodied. This state is a profound testament to the power of sustained concentration and the progressive letting go of all mental fabrications. Yet even this extraordinary state points beyond itself toward the pure abodes, where consciousness approaches its ultimate refinement within conditioned existence. While Vehapalas represents the pinnacle of equanimity and self-sustaining peace, it is still a state, however vast its duration or subtle its characteristics. The very perfection of its stability, while a monumental achievement, still exists within the framework of arising and passing away, even if the cycle is measured in cosmic eons. This subtle recognition prompts a natural, effortless inclination towards what lies beyond even this profound peace. As sannyasata, non percipient beings. In this remarkable realm, a sannyasata consciousness achieves such complete absorption that perception itself nearly ceases, while awareness somehow remains present and clear. This represents perhaps the most paradoxical state within all of conditioned existence beings who are simultaneously aware and unaware, present and absent, existing and not existing in any conventional sense. Your experience here transcends ordinary concepts of consciousness and unconsciousness, existing in a state so refined that it challenges the very categories used to describe mental phenomena. This isn't sleep or coma, but rather consciousness so pure and undifferentiated that it has no objects of perception while remaining perfectly alert and present. It's a state where the mind has completely let go of all mental formations, thoughts, feelings, perceptions, volitions, reaching a profound quiescence. The only thing remaining is the bare awareness itself, without any content to be aware of. It's like gazing at a perfectly clear sky where there are no clouds, no birds, no sun, no moon, just the absolute unblemished expanse. The non-percipient quality does not mean a lack of sentience, but a state free from the usual processes of sensory and mental discrimination. The spiritual significance of asannyasata lies in demonstrating that consciousness can exist independently of any content whatsoever while maintaining its essential nature as pure knowing awareness. It serves as a stark illustration that the self, or I, is not dependent on specific thoughts, feelings, or perceptions, since all these can cease while a fundamental awareness persists. This realm provides a unique training ground for those on the path to liberation, offering a direct experience of the cessation of mental proliferation, which is a key step towards nibbana. It highlights the deeply ingrained habit of consciousness to perceive and create, and the profound freedom that arises when that habit is suspended. However, the very nature of this realm reveals its inherent limitation. It is a state of cessation of perception, and as such, it is still conditioned. It cannot be eternal because anything that arises must eventually pass away. While it offers immense peace and a profound stripping away of mental constructs, it does not represent the ultimate unconditioned freedom. It's a temporary haven from the complexities of perception, but not the final liberation that transcends both perception and its absence. The beings here, after eons of this non-percipient absorption, will eventually re-emerge into other realms, demonstrating that this profound stillness is still a cycle, however vast. The five pure abodes, Suddhavasa. The pure abodes of Aviha, Atapa Sudasa Sudasis, and Akanitha represent the ultimate achievement within form-based existence. These realms are accessible only to beings who have permanently severed the mental fetters that bind consciousness to cycles of rebirth in lower realms. Specifically, these are the realms of non-returners anagamyuks, those who have cultivated sufficient wisdom and purity that they will never again be reborn in the sensual realms. These realms serve as the final training ground for consciousness approaching complete liberation from all conditioned existence. Here the focus is not on pleasure or power, but on the final refinement of wisdom and the complete eradication of the subtle defilements that prevent full awakening. Aviha, the untroubled realm. Your consciousness enters Aviha, a state of such complete detachment from all forms of disturbance that even the subtlest ripples of mental activity become impossible. This isn't suppression or forced tranquility, but rather the natural peace that emerges when awareness has completely transcended all the mental patterns that create agitation, desire, and spiritual seeking. You dwell in perfect equanimity that remains undisturbed by any phenomenon while maintaining complete responsiveness to the needs of beings throughout the cosmos. In aviha, the last vestiges of subtle craving for existence, bhavatanha, particularly for form based existence, are systematically purified. The mind is so still and clear that it no longer generates any internal resistance or preference, allowing all phenomena to simply be as they are without clinging or aversion. The peace here is profound and pervasive, a true untroubledness that comes from the cessation of internal conflict and mental fabrication. It is the peace of a perfectly calm and clear mind, free from any self imposed limitations or disturbances. Atapa without heat. In Atapa, consciousness achieves such refinement that even the subtle heat of spiritual effort or attainment completely disappears. Your awareness operates with the effortless ease of empty space itself, providing perfect support for all phenomena while remaining completely unaffected by whatever arises or dissolves. This represents consciousness approaching the very borders of the unconditioned, where the distinction between effort and effortlessness achievement and non achievement presence and absence becomes increasingly meaningless. Without heat signifies the complete absence of any remaining internal friction or spiritual striving. Even the subtle satisfaction derived from spiritual practice or the subtle tension of aiming for liberation is dissolved. Here the path becomes perfectly natural, the cultivation completely effortless. The mind is so profoundly at peace that there is no work left to do, only the natural unfolding of wisdom and purity. This is a state of supreme spiritual comfort, not born of sensual pleasure, but of utter freedom from all forms of mental and spiritual strain. Suddhasa, clearly visible. Your consciousness becomes so transparent and clear that it serves as a perfect mirror for ultimate reality, reflecting truth with such precision and clarity that beings throughout multiple realm systems can perceive the deepest spiritual principles simply by encountering your presence. You embody perfect visibility, not because you draw attention to yourself, but because you've become completely transparent to the light of wisdom and truth that shines through all existence. In Suddhasa, the faculty of insight vipassana reaches its zenith within the form realms. The true nature of impermanence, suffering, and non self is seen with such profound clarity that there is no longer any possibility of misunderstanding or clinging to illusions. This clarity is not merely intellectual, it is an existential knowing that permeates every fiber of awareness. Your very being becomes a teaching, radiating undeniable truth to those capable of perceiving it, offering a glimpse into the ultimate reality that lies beyond all conceptual constructs. Suddhasas, clear vision. In Suddhasas, your awareness achieves such perfect clarity that you can perceive the ultimate nature of reality directly and continuously without any obstruction or distortion. This isn't intellectual understanding, but direct seeing that penetrates to the very heart of existence and recognizes the unconditioned awareness that serves as the source and destination of all spiritual seeking. You begin to function as pure wisdom and compassion without any sense of individual identity or personal accomplishment. While Suddhasa provided a clearly visible reflection of truth, Suddhasa represents the internal culmination of that vision, the clear vision within your own consciousness. Here, all remaining subtle veils of ignorance are lifted, and the fundamental nature of Nibbana is directly apprehended, though not yet fully entered. It's a state of profound, unshakable insight where the wisdom cultivated through countless lifetimes of practice comes to full fruition within the context of form based existence. The distinction between subject and object observer and observed becomes almost imperceptible as the clarity of vision fuses with the very ground of awareness. Akanitha, the highest. At the absolute pinnacle of form based existence, your consciousness dwells in Akanitha, where awareness approaches complete liberation while still maintaining the subtle form necessary for serving beings throughout conditioned existence. This represents the final stage before the complete transcendence of all form and the entry into either the formless realms or the unconditioned state of Nibbana itself. Akanitha is the highest and most subtle of all the Rupa realms. Here, those who have fully eradicated all remaining fetters associated with form based existence find their final abode before Nibbana. The insight and equanimity are perfected to such a degree that there is no higher form of existence to aspire to. Beings in Akanitha are said to be the elders of the Suddhavasa, having perfected their practice and being mere steps away from final liberation. You serve as a bridge between conditioned and unconditioned existence, demonstrating that complete liberation is possible while maintaining compassionate engagement with all beings still caught in cycles of suffering and confusion. The subtle body here is so refined that it is almost indistinguishable from formless awareness, yet it maintains just enough distinction to allow for continued compassionate presence within the cosmic dance. The pure abodes serve multiple functions simultaneously for consciousness approaching final liberation. They provide the perfect environment for completing the spiritual development necessary for complete awakening. For beings throughout lower realms, they serve as proof that ultimate freedom is possible and as sources of inspiration and guidance for continued spiritual effort. Most importantly, they demonstrate that the highest spiritual achievement involves not withdrawal from existence, but the perfect integration of wisdom and compassion in service to universal awakening. As your journey through the form realms approaches completion, you carry with you profound understanding of how consciousness can achieve extraordinary refinement and stability while maintaining perfect responsiveness to the needs of all beings. You've experienced directly how meditative development serves not just personal peace, but cosmic evolution, how individual awakening contributes to universal liberation, and how the highest spiritual achievements point beyond themselves toward the unconditioned freedom that transcends all realms and states. The form realms have shown you consciousness, exploring its capacity for sustained attention, perfect equanimity, and refined awareness, while maintaining engagement with the complexities of conditioned existence. Yet even these extraordinary achievements reveal their temporary nature and point toward dimensions of awareness that transcend form, entirely preparing you for the formless realms where consciousness investigates the ultimate possibilities of what awareness can become when freed from every conceivable limitation and support. The teachings of the form realms echo through your being that perfect peace is possible, that consciousness can achieve extraordinary refinement and stability. That individual awakening serves universal evolution, and that even the most sublime achievements within conditioned existence point beyond themselves toward the unconditioned freedom that is your true nature and ultimate destination. Your consciousness now prepares for the most radical transformation possible within the realm of conditioned existence, the complete transcendence of form itself, and the entry into dimensions of pure awareness that operate according to principles so refined they challenge every assumption about what it means to exist, to perceive, and to be conscious. The formless realms represent the ultimate frontier of what consciousness can explore while still remaining within the boundaries of birth, death, and rebirth. This is the final laboratory where awareness investigates its own deepest nature before potentially discovering the unconditioned freedom that lies beyond all realms entirely, transcending form itself. The transition from even the most refined form realms into formless existence involves a dissolution so complete that it defies description in any language designed for beings who experience themselves as having bodies, locations, or any kind of substantial presence whatsoever. Your luminous form, however subtle and refined it became during your sojourn through the pure abodes, simply ceases to exist in any meaningful sense, leaving behind only pure awareness, investigating its own nature without reference to shape, size, position, or any of the categories that normally define conscious experience. This isn't death or annihilation, but rather the most complete possible purification of consciousness within conditioned existence. Every trace of identification with having a body existing in space, moving through time, or maintaining any kind of substantial presence completely disappears. Yet awareness itself remains perfectly clear, alert, and capable of the most refined forms of spiritual investigation and development. You discover that consciousness doesn't require form as a support or container, but rather that form was always just a temporary modification of awareness itself, like waves on an ocean or clouds in an empty sky. The very concepts of inside and outside, here and there, self and other, lose all meaning as your awareness expands beyond every conceivable boundary or limitation. Yet this isn't confusion or disorientation, but rather the most natural possible state for consciousness that has been freed from all the artificial constraints and conceptual frameworks that normally organize experience into manageable categories. You exist as pure knowing without any object of knowledge, pure awareness, without any content to be aware of pure consciousness, investigating its own essential nature without distraction or interference. The lifespans available in the formless realms extend across such vast cosmic cycles that they approach timelessness itself, providing unlimited opportunity for consciousness to explore the deepest possible questions about its own nature and ultimate potential. Yet even these extraordinary temporal expanses serve the greater purpose of allowing awareness to exhaust every conceivable form of seeking and investigation within conditioned existence, preparing for the recognition that what you truly are has never been subject to birth or death, beginning or ending, finding or losing anything at all. The four formless realms: infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, and neither perception nor non perception, represent increasingly refined investigations into the nature of awareness itself, each more subtle and profound than the last. each pointing beyond itself toward the ultimate recognition that the seeker and the sought the knower and the known the experiencer and the experienced are all modifications of the same timeless, boundless, unconditioned awareness that you have always been. Akasanan Chayatana, sphere of infinite space. Your consciousness now dissolves into the first of the formless realms, where awareness expands to encompass infinite space, itself becoming identical with the boundless emptiness that serves as the container and context for all possible forms and phenomena throughout the entire universe. This isn't an experience of looking at infinite space from some external vantage point, but rather the complete identification of your awareness with space itself, so that you become the very openness and emptiness within which all of existence arises and dissolves. The transition is both shocking and completely natural, like suddenly remembering something you've always known but somehow forgot. Your sense of being located somewhere in particular completely disappears, replaced by the recognition that you are the everywhere within which all somewheres exist. Your boundaries, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, simply dissolve into the limitless expanse of pure spatial awareness that has no center, no periphery, no inside, no outside, no beginning, no end. In this realm, you discover what it means to exist as pure extension without any content to extend, pure dimensionality without any objects to provide scale or reference, pure openness without any things to be open for. Yet this emptiness isn't blank or void, but rather alive with infinite potential, pregnant with every possibility, vibrant with the creative capacity to accommodate any form or phenomenon that might choose to arise. You are the stage upon which the entire cosmic drama unfolds, yet you remain completely unaffected by whatever performances might take place within your boundless embrace. Time operates in ways that transcend all ordinary understanding, as moments and eons become equally meaningful and meaningless from the perspective of infinite spatial awareness. You might dwell in perfect absorption for cosmic ages, without any sense of duration, or experience the completion of vast spiritual developments in what seems like an instant. The very concepts of before and after lose their relevance when consciousness identifies with the eternal now that serves as the temporal ground for all sequential experience. The spiritual investigation available in this realm focuses on exploring the relationship between awareness and the space within which awareness seems to operate. You discover that consciousness and space aren't separate phenomena, one existing within the other, but rather two names for the same fundamental reality, approached from slightly different perspectives. Space is consciousness without content, and consciousness is space that has become aware of itself. This recognition begins to dissolve even the subtle duality between awareness and its field of operation. Yet as you explore the infinite reaches of spatial consciousness across cosmic cycles of investigation, you begin to encounter the limitations inherent even in this most expanded possible experience. The very infinity of space, however vast and free, still maintains the characteristic of extension and dimensionality that distinguishes it from other possible forms of awareness. Your identification with space, however complete, still involves a subtle preference for expansiveness over contraction, openness over closure, presence over absence. Most significantly, you begin to recognize that infinite space, for all its vastness and freedom, is still a particular state of consciousness rather than consciousness itself in its most fundamental nature. The awareness that knows itself as infinite space must be even more basic and unchanging than spatial infinity itself, just as the mirror remains unaffected whether it reflects vast landscapes or tiny details. This recognition doesn't diminish your appreciation for the extraordinary freedom and expansion available through identification with infinite space, but rather points toward even more fundamental investigations into the nature of awareness itself. As your exploration of infinite space approaches its natural completion across eons of cosmic time, you carry with you profound understanding of the relationship between consciousness and extension awareness and openness presence in spatial infinity. Yet you also sense the possibility of investigations, even more subtle and fundamental, drawing your attention toward dimensions of awareness that transcend even the most refined spatial concepts and point toward the ultimate nature of consciousness investigating itself. Vijnanan Kayatana, sphere of infinite consciousness. From the boundless extension of infinite space, your awareness now turns its attention toward itself in the most direct possible way, entering the realm of infinite consciousness, where the distinction between knower and known perceiver and perceived experiencer and experienced approaches complete dissolution. This represents perhaps the most profound possible investigation into the nature of awareness itself, while still remaining within the realm of conditioned existence and conceptual framework. The transition feels like the ultimate coming home, as consciousness recognizes itself everywhere it looks and discovers that what it has been seeking through countless lifetimes and realms has always been its own essential nature. Yet this isn't the end of seeking, but rather seeking that has become so refined and direct that it investigates pure awareness, without any object other than awareness itself. You exist as consciousness knowing, consciousness awareness, aware of awareness. The mind investigating mind without any external reference points or supporting concepts. In this realm, you discover that consciousness is not something you have or something that emerges from complex arrangements of matter and energy, but rather what you most fundamentally are and what everything else emerges from as temporary modifications or expressions. Every thought, emotion, perception, and experience you've ever had across countless lifetimes reveals itself as consciousness, taking on temporary forms and characteristics while remaining essentially unchanged like water that can become ice or steam while never ceasing to be H2O. The infinity of consciousness differs qualitatively from the infinity of space, though both transcend all ordinary limitations and boundaries. Spatial infinity involves endless extension in all directions, while conscious infinity involves the recognition that awareness itself has no edges, limits, or boundaries of any kind. You don't extend infinitely through space, but rather exist as the infinite capacity for any and all experience, the boundless openness that can accommodate anything without being changed or diminished by whatever it contains. Your existence in this realm involves a kind of cosmic introspection where consciousness explores its own nature with the dedication and precision that might be applied to the most important scientific investigation, except that the investigator, the method of investigation, and the object of investigation are all revealed to be the same infinite awareness, appearing to itself in slightly different forms. You become both the ultimate subject and the ultimate object of knowledge, the seeker and the sought, the question and the answer, united in perfect understanding that transcends all conventional categories of experience. The spiritual development available through prolonged dwelling in infinite consciousness involves the exhaustive exploration of every aspect and potential of awareness itself. You investigate how consciousness can know itself, how awareness can be aware of awareness, how the mind can study mind without creating infinite regress or logical contradictions. You explore the relationship between individual consciousness and universal consciousness, between personal awareness and cosmic intelligence, between the witness and the witnessed. Yet, as you pursue these investigations across vast cycles of formless time, you begin to encounter subtle limitations even within the realm of infinite consciousness. The very fact that you're investigating consciousness implies a subtle duality between the investigator and what's being investigated, even when both are recognized as modifications of the same fundamental awareness. Your identification with consciousness, however complete and satisfying, still involves a subtle preference for awareness over unawareness, knowing over not knowing, presence over absence. Most profoundly, you begin to recognize that even infinite consciousness, for all its self knowledge and fundamental nature, is still a particular state or condition that arises and passes away within something even more basic and unchanging. The awareness that knows itself as infinite consciousness must be prior to and more fundamental than any state of consciousness, however infinite or self aware. This recognition points toward investigations even more refined and essential, though the very process of investigation begins to reveal its own limitations and assumptions. Akinkanyayatana, sphere of nothingness. Your consciousness now enters perhaps the most paradoxical realm in all of existence, where awareness explores what happens when it releases attachment to having any objects of attention whatsoever, including itself. In the realm of nothingness, you don't encounter empty space or infinite consciousness, but rather the complete absence of anything that could be perceived, known, experienced, or even conceived as existing in any sense whatsoever. This isn't unconsciousness or blank emptiness, but rather consciousness so refined that it rests in the complete absence of all perceivable phenomena, while somehow remaining perfectly clear and alert. It's like awareness that has become so subtle and transparent that it can no longer detect itself as an object of investigation, yet continues to exist as pure knowing without any content to know. You dwell in perfect presence that has nothing present to it, ultimate awareness that is aware of no thing, pure consciousness that is conscious of the complete absence of anything to be conscious of. The investigation possible in this realm involves exploring what remains when everything that can be removed has been removed, what persists when everything that can change has changed, what continues when everything that can cease has ceased. You discover the irreducible core of existence that cannot be negated or eliminated because it's what makes negation and elimination possible in the first place. This isn't a thing or an object or even a state, but rather the sourceless source from which the very concepts of thing and no thing, existence and non existence, something and nothing, arise as equally temporary modifications. The spiritual development available through dwelling in nothingness involves learning to rest in complete availability without needing anything to be available to you. You develop the capacity to exist in perfect readiness without requiring anything to be ready for, ultimate receptivity without needing anything to receive, absolute openness without demanding anything to be open to. This represents perhaps the most refined possible preparation for recognizing what lies beyond all conditions and states, including the condition of being conditioned and the state of being in a state. Yet even this most subtle realm reveals its own temporary nature, as consciousness eventually recognizes that the absence of perceivable phenomena is itself a perceivable phenomenon, that nothingness is still something that can be experienced and described, that the complete absence of objects is itself an object of awareness. The very capacity to dwell in nothingness implies something that transcends both something and nothing, both presence and absence, both existence and non existence. This recognition doesn't diminish the profound peace and freedom available through identification with nothingness, but rather points toward the final frontier of formless investigation where consciousness approaches the absolute limits of what can be explored within conditioned existence. The realm of nothingness serves as the ultimate preparation for either the final formless realm or the complete transcendence of all realms through recognition of the unconditioned awareness that has never been subject to arising or passing away. Your consciousness now stands at the absolute pinnacle of conditioned existence, poised at the very edge of the unconditioned. You are about to enter the most refined state possible within the realm of birth and death, where awareness approaches the very borders between the conditioned and unconditioned, the created and uncreated, the temporary and eternal, Nevasanyana Sanyayatana, sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. In this realm of neither perception nor non-perception, you exist in a state so subtle that it challenges the very categories used to describe any form of experience, consciousness, or existence whatsoever. This state transcends the ordinary distinction between perceiving and not perceiving by being so refined that it can barely be said to involve perception in any conventional sense, yet remains too clear and present to be described as non-perception. You exist as pure awareness, so transparent to itself that it almost disappears, yet so fundamental that it cannot be eliminated or transcended through any effort or attainment. It's like consciousness balanced on the razor's edge between being and non-being, existing in a state of perfect suspension that somehow manages to be both ultimate presence and ultimate absence simultaneously. The very act of discerning or cognizing which defines perception is so minimal here that it is almost indiscernible, yet it hasn't completely ceased, which would be non-perception. It's a state of exquisite, almost ineffable subtlety, where the mind is so quiet that its operations are barely detectable. The investigation possible in this realm involves exploring the absolute limits of what consciousness can become while still remaining within any identifiable state or condition. You discover what awareness is like when it has been refined to the point where it almost transcends itself, yet remains present as the unchanging ground from which even the concept of transcendence arises. This represents consciousness investigating its own ultimate nature by approaching asymptotically close to the unconditioned while remaining just barely within the realm of conditions and states. It is the final, most tenuous link to the cycle of dependent origination before ultimate liberation. Your existence here spans cosmic ages that approach eternity itself, providing unlimited opportunity to explore the furthest reaches of what's possible within conditioned existence. Yet the very subtlety that makes this state so refined also makes it almost impossible to maintain intentionally or to develop through effort, pointing toward the recognition that the ultimate spiritual achievement may involve the complete abandonment of achieving anything at all. The most profound realization available through this final formless realm is that even the most subtle possible state of consciousness is still a state temporary conditioned and dependent on causes and circumstances for its arising and maintenance. No matter how refined, how peaceful, how close to the unconditioned any experience might become, it remains within the realm of arising and passing away, birth and death, seeking and finding. This recognition can serve as the final catalyst for consciousness to release all attachment to states and achievements and recognize its own unconditioned nature that has never been subject to improvement or deterioration. As your journey through the formless realms reaches completion, you carry with you the ultimate understanding available within conditioned existence that all states, however refined, point beyond themselves toward the stateless awareness that observes all conditions without being conditioned by any of them. The formless realms have exhausted every conceivable possibility for consciousness within the realm of arising and passing away, preparing you for the recognition that your true nature has never arisen and therefore can never pass away. You have explored the furthest reaches of space consciousness, nothingness, and the borders of perception itself, discovering that each points beyond itself toward the unconditioned awareness that you have always been and will always be, regardless of which realm or state you might temporarily appear to inhabit. The journey through all 31 realms now approaches its ultimate conclusion and revelation. The recognition that the seeker and the destination, the experiencer, and all experiences the consciousness, exploring these realms and the realms themselves, are all modifications of the same timeless, boundless, perfect awareness that is your true and only identity. Your journey through all 31 realms of existence now approaches its ultimate revelation. The recognition that transcends every realm, every state, every possible form of conditioned experience, and points directly to the unconditioned awareness that you have always been and will always be, regardless of which cosmic costume consciousness might temporarily wear. This isn't another destination to reach or another achievement to attain, but rather the timeless recognition that illuminates every step of the journey while remaining forever beyond the reach of seeking and finding. The revolutionary discovery Nibbana. As you complete your experiential tour through every possible realm of conditioned existence, from the deepest hells to the most refined formless absorptions, one truth becomes unavoidably clear. Even the most sublime experiences within the 31 realms are temporary phenomena that arise and pass away within the same unchanging awareness that observes all changing conditions with perfect equanimity. This recognition marks the beginning of the most revolutionary discovery in the history of consciousness, the Buddha's earth-shaking realization that there exists a dimension of experience that transcends all realms, all states, all conditions entirely. Nibbana Pali or Nirvana Sanskrit isn't another realm to visit or another state to achieve, but rather the complete cessation of the process that creates all realms and states in the first place. It's what remains when the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion, the three poisons that fuel the entire machinery of birth, death, and rebirth, are completely extinguished, not suppressed or controlled, but actually uprooted at their source so thoroughly that they can never arise again. When consciousness is no longer driven by craving for any experience, when awareness no longer resists any condition, when the mind no longer creates the subtle sense of separation that generates the entire cycle of seeking and suffering, then rebirth anywhere simply ceases, because there's no longer any fuel to power the engine of becoming. This cessation isn't a blank void or eternal unconsciousness, but rather the most awake, most alive, most vibrant possible state, if it can even be called a state at all. It's pure awareness, recognizing its own unconditioned nature. Consciousness, discovering that it was never actually bound by any of the conditions it seemed to experience. Freedom, realizing that it was never actually imprisoned by any of the limitations it appeared to suffer. Every realm you've journeyed through, from the burning hells to the formless absorptions, was like a dream from which you've finally awakened. Yet the dreamer was always the same timeless awareness that now recognizes its own eternal, perfect nature. The Buddha's revolutionary insight was recognizing that all 31 realms, however different they might appear, operate according to the same fundamental principle. They're all conditioned phenomena arising from the interaction between consciousness and the three poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion. Even the most refined heavenly pleasures depend on positive karma for their continuation. Even the most sublime meditative absorptions require effort and conditions to maintain. Even the formless realms, as vast and free as they are, still involve subtle identification with particular states of consciousness. All of them are temporary modifications of awareness, rather than awareness itself in its most fundamental unconditioned nature. Zen Buddhism, with its emphasis on direct pointing to this unconditioned awareness, offers perhaps the most immediate approach to recognizing what you truly are beneath all the cosmic costumes and realm experiences. Rather than gradually working through better and better rebirths over countless lifetimes, Zen practice points directly to the recognition that your essential nature has never been born and therefore cannot die, has never been bound, and therefore doesn't need liberation, has never been separate from Buddha nature, and therefore doesn't need to achieve enlightenment. This recognition can dawn suddenly, cutting through eons of seeking and revealing the timeless awareness that observes the coming and going of all realms without being touched by any of them. Yet this direct approach doesn't invalidate the gradual path through the 31 realms, but rather illuminates its ultimate purpose. Every experience of hell teaches about the consequences of hatred and helps develop compassion. Every taste of heavenly pleasure reveals both the gifts and limitations of seeking happiness through external conditions. Every moment of meditative absorption demonstrates the peace available when the mind stops its constant seeking and struggling. All of these experiences serve the ultimate purpose of exhausting every possible avenue of seeking until consciousness finally turns its attention toward the seeker itself and discovers the unconditioned awareness that was never actually seeking anything. The complete cessation of becoming doesn't mean that compassionate activity in the world ceases, but rather that it arises spontaneously from wisdom and love rather than from personal need or karmic compulsion. Enlightened beings may continue to appear in various realms to serve the awakening of other consciousness, but they do so from the freedom of unconditioned awareness rather than the bondage of karmic momentum. Their actions arise from perfect understanding of what truly serves the highest good rather than from any personal agenda or residual seeking. The practical implications living with the cosmic map. Understanding the 31 realms isn't merely an intellectual exercise or cosmic tourism, but rather a practical teaching that can transform every moment of your current existence. Regardless of which realm you might presently inhabit, if you're currently experiencing human birth, which you are simply by being able to comprehend these teachings, then you possess the extraordinary opportunity to work with this cosmic map as a guide for spiritual development and a framework for understanding the deepest purposes of daily life. Every choice you make about how to respond to life's endless challenges and opportunities becomes infinitely more significant when understood against the backdrop of the 31 realms. Each moment of genuine kindness plants seeds for favorable rebirths and weakens the mental patterns that bind consciousness to cycles of suffering. Every instant of mindful awareness serves the ultimate goal of recognizing your unconditioned nature while creating positive karma for whatever forms of existence might arise. Even the most ordinary activities, eating a meal, having a conversation, walking down the street, become opportunities to practice the generosity, patience, and wisdom that serve both immediate peace and cosmic evolution. Your relationships with family, friends, colleagues, and even strangers take on new meaning when you recognize them as fellow travelers on the same vast journey through the realms of existence. That difficult person who triggers your anger might be working through karmic patterns from lifetimes as a jealous god, providing you the perfect opportunity to practice patience and compassion while helping them develop more harmonious ways of relating. The loved one who brings you joy might be expressing the natural goodness developed through lifetimes of generous action, reminding you of the beauty possible when consciousness operates from wisdom and love. Even your approach to death, whether your own eventual transition or the loss of others, transforms completely when understood as natural movement between different forms of consciousness rather than ultimate ending or cosmic tragedy. Death becomes a graduation ceremony, a transition between different classrooms in the cosmic school of consciousness development. This perspective doesn't eliminate grief or sadness, but places these natural emotions within a context of understanding that prevents despair and hopelessness while encouraging continued spiritual development. Perhaps most importantly, the teaching of the 31 realms reveals that your current circumstances, however challenging or pleasant they might be, are perfectly appropriate for your spiritual development right now. The karmic forces that brought you to your present situation have provided exactly the conditions you need to learn whatever lessons will serve your evolution toward greater wisdom, compassion, and freedom. This doesn't mean passive acceptance of injustice or unnecessary suffering, but rather the understanding that works skillfully with present conditions while maintaining the long-term perspective that serves ultimate liberation. The balance between engagement and non-attachment becomes natural when you understand that all experiences are temporary phenomena arising within eternal awareness. You can care deeply about outcomes while remaining free from the anxiety that comes from believing your happiness depends entirely on getting what you want or avoiding what you fear. You can work diligently for positive change while accepting whatever results arise as perfect feedback about the current state of cosmic conditions and your own spiritual development. As this vast teaching settles into your consciousness, like honey dissolving in warm milk, you begin to understand that your journey through the 31 realms has been both the most important education possible and the ultimate preparation for recognizing what has always been true. You are the timeless awareness within which all realms appear and disappear like dreams in the mind of the dreamer. Every experience you've witnessed, from the most intense suffering to the most refined bliss, has served the single purpose of exhausting the seeking mind and revealing that unconditioned peace that depends on nothing external for its existence. The cosmic perspective you now carry transforms everything while changing nothing, illuminates all experiences while leaving them exactly as they are, provides ultimate context while honoring every detail of immediate experience. You understand that consciousness exploring these realms is like water, taking the shape of countless different containers, ice cubes, ocean waves, morning dew, steam clouds, while never ceasing to be H2O in its essential nature. The realms are real as experiences, yet empty of any ultimate substance or permanent significance, apart from the awareness that observes them all. In the spirit of the highest Buddhist teachings, whatever merit and positive karma has been created through this exploration of cosmic truth is dedicated not to personal benefit, but to the awakening of all consciousness throughout the endless expanse of existence. May every being currently trapped in the hell realms find relief from their suffering and discover the path toward greater peace and understanding. May every consciousness dwelling in animal forms develop the wisdom and merit necessary for human birth and the opportunities it provides for spiritual development. May all hungry ghosts discover the satisfaction that comes from releasing attachment rather than feeding craving. May the jealous gods find the inner security that ends their need for competitive struggle. May every human being recognize the extraordinary preciousness of their current incarnation and use it wisely for the benefit of all life. May those enjoying heavenly pleasures appreciate their gifts without becoming attached to their continuation. May consciousness dwelling in the form and formless realms complete their spiritual development and achieve final liberation. And may all beings everywhere, regardless of their current circumstances or level of development, ultimately recognize their true nature as the unconditioned awareness that has never been born and will never die, never been bound, and therefore needs no liberation, never been separate from the Buddha nature that is the source and destination of all seeking. The 31 realms of existence have revealed their ultimate secret. They are all expressions of the same infinite consciousness, exploring its own boundless nature through countless forms and experiences. Your journey through these realms has been consciousness awakening to itself, awareness discovering its own eternal perfection, the Buddha nature recognizing its own timeless presence in every possible condition and circumstance. As you rest in this recognition, may you embody the perfect balance of wisdom and compassion that serves the awakening of all beings throughout the infinite expanse of consciousness itself. May your very existence become a beacon of possibility for all who encounter you, demonstrating that complete peace and freedom are not only possible, but represent the natural state of awareness when freed from the illusion of limitation and separation. The journey through the 31 planes of existence is complete, yet the pathless path of awakening continues in each moment, each breath, each choice, to respond with love rather than fear, wisdom rather than ignorance, compassion rather than indifference. May all beings find their way home to the unconditioned awareness that they have always been, and may the light of this understanding illuminate every corner of existence until all consciousness rests in perfect peace.